Hello friends, welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Welcome to a Feathers v4 chill stream. So if you've been paying attention to the channel, I've been doing streams over the past week or so where I just go through the Feathers v4 guide, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm actually going to be going through the quick start again, which I did last weekend, but we're going to try it again. We're going to make less typos. I'm going to try to say less ums. And we will, I just said again, we will record some tutorials. Cool. So let's say hello to all the people in the chat. Hello, Kaglar. That's probably not how you pronounce your name, but hello, welcome to the stream. Oh yeah, and I was having some serious issues trying to use the YouTube Studio Beta for live streaming. It wouldn't show me the preview button. I had to go back to the old thing. I don't know. I feel it's not ready for me yet. Not ready for how I use live streaming, at least. Hello, Yasser. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Batar. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Bohan. Hello, Katoli. Welcome. And thanks for the reminder. I did send out a message on Discord. Hello, Domenico. We're just getting started, but let's take a quick stretch. Get ready to write some feathers. Hello, Guile. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Ed. Hello, Spacey. Hello, Harsh. Harsh says, I was solving some katas, just started solving them thanks to CJ. Glad to hear it. That's awesome. Hey, Avi. Avi asks, how am I doing? I'm doing pretty good. I didn't get the best sleep last night, but I've had my caffeine today. I feel okay. I'm ready to make some tutorials. Hello, Julian. He says, thank you for another one at a time convenient for me. Happy you can tune in. Hello, Bastion. So here's how to pronounce their name. Shalar, as in large. So, Shalar? Shalar? Hello, Shalar. Hello, Prashanth. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Daniel, who says CJ is so helpful. Thank you, Daniel. Hello, Tom. Welcome. Guile says this is the first time they're tuning in from Spain. That's great. Harsh says watching the stream on the job. Well, at least you're maybe learning while you're on the job. Hola, senor, to Borrow Development. Welcome to the stream. So as I mentioned, we're going to be creating some Feathers v4 tutorials. If you take a look at my YouTube channel, I have been streaming about Feathers quite a bit. I had David on a little over a week ago, the creator and core maintainer of Feathers. He came on to do a Q&A. And I've recorded some tutorials. If you saw in the community tab, I had some unlisted videos, but I'm actually just going to go ahead and re-record those because there were some typos. I'm going to try to make them clean. No typos. I mean, maybe a few, but as minimal as possible. Yeah, and so if you don't know what Feathers is, check it out at feathersjs.com. It is a framework for building real-time applications and REST APIs. It's a library that works both on the client side and on the server side for building real-time applications and REST-enabled applications. They have all kinds of adapters for many different databases. It works with vanilla JavaScript. There are community packages that allow it to work with other frameworks as well. It's really easy to get up and going, and I think it's great, which is why I'm making these tutorials. So essentially, I'm going to be going through the quick start right here, but you're just going to see the quick start from my perspective. I won't be bouncing back and forth between the docs. I'll have my notes on a separate computer, and I'll record the tutorials. Let's keep saying hello to all the people. More people are joining. Pranjal is asking, how's your job going? My job is good. It's getting busy. We're getting towards the delivery of a project, so it's getting pretty busy. Hello, Orlando. Welcome to the stream. Shalar says, Sha. I mean, does that mean I got it right? Or maybe I'm probably still butchered it, but welcome. Hello, Snail. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, Shalar says, never mind. Hello, Amen, who says, hi man, it's the first time to see you here in the live chat, but I was one of the consistent people to watch your videos, especially the Trello Cone. You helped me a lot, and I would say thank you. You're very welcome. Bohan is saying, are you open for questions not related to Feathers? Absolutely, yeah. Feel free to throw them in the chat. I'll try to keep up, and in between doing these tutorials and in between pieces of the tutorials, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Yeah, Harsh makes a good point, and this is how I've done a lot of my tutorials in the past, where I kind of just like build the thing. But these are going along with the guide, so I do want them to be a little more polished. I'm not really going to edit them. I want to kind of do them in one take, which is how I normally do it. But still a good pristine take. Baro is asking, is it fair to compare Express to Feathers? Feathers actually has a you can use Express with Feathers. So the tagline that this is a framework, let's go to the website. A framework for building real-time applications and REST APIs. So it used to be that Feathers and Express were actually very tightly integrated, and when you look at a Feathers app, it actually looks very similar to an Express app. But the way they are architecting it and the way they built it is, if you want to have a REST API, right now, adding the Express package is essentially a way to expose your Express application as a REST application. So Feathers and Express go pretty well together. But in the future, it will be possible to use things like Koa. So let's check out Koa. Koa is another framework that is very similar. It's not the camping ground. Koa.js, very similar to Express in that it's a very minimal web framework for the backend. But this works off of, it used to work off of generators. I believe the latest works off of like async and await. And it's similar to Express in that it's a very small library. But in the future, you can use this with Feathers instead of Express. Another one is called Happy.js. This comes out of Walmart Labs. And it is also very similar to Express. We compare it to Express because pretty much everyone knows what Express is, but this is another library for building backend REST APIs, and eventually Feathers will support that. So you can think of Feathers as like this way of structuring your application that doesn't care about what you use exactly for REST or what you use exactly for sockets, but then it has packages that you can add which expose it over REST. And I'll talk about that a little bit when I get deeper into the tutorials. But that is a great question, Baro, because a lot of people ask it, and in the past, Express has been tightly integrated with Feathers. Hello, Orlando Shalom. Pranjal is asking, when is the next chill stream? This is kind of one, because in between tutorials, I will just be answering and talking to the chat, so that's why I call it a chill stream. It's nothing formal, and these things will be edited later. Vamsi is asking, well, first, hope you're doing super. I'm doing good. And they want to know, am I using containers with your apps? I am. I'm using Docker, at work, at least. I haven't really talked about Docker on this channel, but I will eventually because I've been using it a lot lately. Hello, Ahmed. Welcome to the stream. Pranjal is asking, have I used Java for building web services? I've built really basic ones, and I've made like a basic app with Spring Boot, but nothing large. Yes, sir is asking, what do I think about the Brave browser? Have I used it? I think it's interesting. I'll pull it up for those of you that haven't heard of it. So the thing about Brave, so Brave itself is a separate web browser, so similar to Chrome or Firefox or Safari, it is a web browser. But the interesting thing about it is built into it is our privacy features, so like ad blocking, tracker blocking, that kind of thing. There are definitely other things about it, but typically, like I like to use Chrome. Under the hood, Brave is using the Chromium rendering engine. So Chromium is the open source piece of the Chrome web browser. So it's using that, and I have lots of extensions that I use that help with privacy online. So that's why I haven't used it, and mainly because I'm building websites where I'm supporting, or like my end users are pretty much using Chrome. And this is like a slight version of Chrome, so I want to make sure the apps that I'm building are supported in like real Chrome. Though, because it's using Chromium, it should still work. But it's interesting, so check out Brave if you haven't heard of it. Yeah. Hello, Amada. Welcome to the stream. Avi says, Hebrew English makes me queens. That's when I said shalom. Brian is asking, I'm going to build a REST API for the first time. Should I use Express? I think so. I think if you're just getting started, maybe you've never built one before, I would say start as basic as you can get, either with Express, Koa, or Happy. In terms of beginner friendly, probably Happy and Express are probably fairly beginner friendly. I say Koa isn't because it uses async await, and there's probably stuff floating around with generators, which is a little harder to grasp. But yes, I do have tutorials on my channel where I walk through building a REST API from scratch. We're still using libraries, like we're using Express, but I talk through all of the concepts that are involved. Yeah, look at this CRUD API tutorial. The thing about Feathers is you can literally type one command and you get a REST API. So if you're looking to learn about REST APIs, I wouldn't exactly start there. You may do this, you'll understand how things are all hooked together, and then when you start using Feathers, you'll just see how magic it is, but you'll still know that it's pretty much doing all that same stuff under the hood. Yeah. Hello, man on the run from Greece. All right, let's get started. So like I mentioned, I'm going to do the quick start. This has us initially build a super basic Feathers service, and then we'll build a super basic client to talk to that service. So let me prepare myself. I'm going to get my notes ready. I have a separate computer. It's a Razer laptop. Brightness increase. My mouse doesn't seem to be working on this computer. I have a challenge from Shalar. Why isn't the mouse? This is insane. Why is my mouse not working? This could be very bad for the tutorial. Though I think I'm going to do, yeah, I'm going to do like one page at a time. It should be okay. Okay. Shalar is challenging me to record 2 short videos in under 5 hours. Oh, under 5. Okay, I thought it said under 5 minutes. Hopefully we'll get more than 2 videos. Yeah, I mean, if you tuned into the first Feathers live stream, it took me like an hour just to make a slide deck, and then I ended up making like a 3-minute video. I guess I will mention that really quick. So if you're totally new to Feathers and you have no idea what I'm talking about, go to my channel, click on community. Actually, I'll share it right now, but I made this post where I shared a playlist, and these are the videos that I made last time. But if you watch the first 2, that's going to give you an idea of like what Feathers is. I kind of already did, but maybe that'll help a little bit more. But what I'm about to do is re-record these 3 videos right here, and then I'm going to record more videos. But let's do it. Shalar, just kidding. You're doing great. Appreciate that. Shaik is asking, can I know how to do a live stream setup like this? Yes. Go to YouTube and then search for Coding Garden stream setup. That was funny. I was getting recommended bodybuilding videos at the bottom. Did you see that? Cool. This second one, setting up a stream. I did the stream a while back where I just walked through all of my gear and show you how I set it all up. So you can check out this video. Aditya, please do not spam the chat. But I do plan to make some JavaScript tutorials for beginners. Setup stream stuff. So yeah, so you can see that video to see how I get set up. And then if you go to coding.garden/gear, you can see all of the things that I use to stream with Amazon links. If you'd like to support me, you can click this link. If you don't want to support me, you can click this link, which is just a bare Amazon link. But yeah. Aditya, please don't, I don't want to have to quiet you or ban you. Don't spam the chat. Cool. All right, let's get started. So here's what I'm gonna do. Let's close code. Let's open a new tab. We're gonna go into the Coding Garden directory. And I am going to hide this top bar here. So when you're recording tutorials, you want to have the minimum number of distractions as possible. So let's automatically hide the mini bar. There we go, nice and clean. We'll throw this in the center. I think I want to hide some of these emojis. It's just too few emojis. Let's keep the peacock and the parrot, and the eagle, and the duck and the owl. Let's see how that looks. That's better. That's a better number of emojis. Okay, we've got our terminal in the center here. Everything else is closed. And I don't think I'm going to have to open the browser for this tutorial, so I think we're good there. And we're good over here. All right, I'm going to hide my face now. We're going to go into tutorial mode. Here we go. Do-do-do-do. Okay. And I guess if I mess up, I'm going to try not to go back to the beginning. I'm gonna pause. Actually, I need something that I can make a noise so when I'm editing I can go back to. I don't think I have a bell. Oh well, we'll figure it out. Okay. Deep breath. Take a drink of tea. Here we go. We're about to do it. In this quick start video, we're going to learn about the basics of Feathers.js by building a very simple service that works on the back end. So first, we will create a directory. We'll call it Feathers Basics. And then we'll... we can't because it already exists. Okay, we'll start over. That was from last time. And there's my break timer anyways. All right, it's gonna happen, I swear. Cool. In this quick start video, we're going to learn the basics of Feathers.js by building a very simple backend Feathers service. So the first thing we'll do is create a directory, and then we'll go into that directory. Now inside of here, we will initialize it with npm to get a package JSON. So I'm going to do npm init-y, and that will create a package JSON with all of my defaults that I have specified. And I'm going to go ahead and open this up in code, VS Code, so we can see what we've got going on. Super basic package JSON, but now I will install the Feathers.js dependency. So to do that, I'll do npm I at feathers.js/feathers. Awesome. So it says it finished. And if we look at our package JSON, Feathers is now listed as a dependency. So we are ready to go. Now, the first thing I'll do is create a file. Let's call it app.js. And then we'll bring in the Feathers dependency. So I'll say const feathers equals require at feathers.js/feathers. Great. And then I will create a Feathers application. And you do that by invoking Feathers. So we'll invoke Feathers. Now I have a Feathers application. Awesome. So the first thing we'll do is create a very simple service. Now, when you get started coding with Feathers, typically at first you won't have to create your own service. There are a lot of built-in adapters and services that you can use, but this is just going to give you a good idea of what's happening under the hood. So we're going to create a very simple message service that keeps track of created messages and allows us to create new messages. So first we'll create a class. We'll call it message service. And then in the constructor, we're going to create a simple instance property called messages, like so. Then we will implement the find method. So every Feathers service implements a set of methods. You can see in later videos what all of those methods are, or you can check out the docs to see what they are. But one of those is find. And before we do that, I made a simple typo. We forgot the equal sign. So we're creating a basic array of messages. All right, so I'll create an async function called find. And right now, our find function is going to be super basic. It's just going to return this array of messages. So we'll just say return this.messages. So if anyone calls the find method, they're just going to get this array of messages that we're holding internally. Awesome. The other method I'm going to create is called create. So this is an async method. And this will take in some data. So the data is essentially the message that we are creating. So we take in that data, and then we'll need to do something with it. So first, let's create a message object. It will have an ID. For now, we're just going to use the length of the array. In other things, you might generate an ID, or the database might generate an ID for you. But because we're just working with JavaScript, I'm just going to use the length of the array. So I'll say this.messages.length. And then we'll give it a text property. And that text property will come from this data object that we're passing in. So I'll say text is data.text. Awesome. So we have our message. Now we need to do something with it. In this case, we're just going to push it into the array. So right here, we'll say this.messages.push data message. And the last thing we'll do is we'll just return that message that we created. So we'll say return message. Great. Now we have a super simple service. It implements the find method and the create method. And now we can add this service to our Feathers app to actually use it and use the features of Feathers to interact with this service. So the first thing we'll do is register the service. And we do that by saying app.use, and then we name it. In this case, I'm going to call it the messages service. And then we'll pass in an instance of the message service. So I'll just say new message service. Awesome. So if you remember, app is the Feathers app that we created. And now we're essentially registering an instance of this message service that we just created with the name messages. Awesome. Okay, let's move on from there. So now that we've registered the service, we can actually listen for when things happen. So if we want to know any time that a message was created, we can tap into that. So we're going to do this right here. We'll say app.service messages. Now, when you say app.service, that gets a reference to a service. And because we registered the service there, here we're getting access to that service that we just registered. And then we'll use on created. And this is going to listen for when a message is created. We'll give it a callback function that gets access to the message. And then for now, we'll just log a new message has been created. And we'll pass in the message. Awesome. Now, this is one of the really cool features of Feathers is that we really didn't have to write any code. And you can see in our create method, we're not really writing any code to notify people of things being created. But when we register the service, Feathers knows how to hook into these things so that we can listen for when messages are created. Awesome. So now let's actually use this service. We're going to create a few messages, retrieve the messages, and kind of just see what happens. For this, I'll create a basic function. We'll call it main. This is going to be an async function. And inside of here, I am going to create a message. So just like above, we got a reference to the messages service. We can do that right here. We can say await app.service messages. So now we have a reference to it, and we want to create a message. So we'll say .create, and then we'll pass in our options. And if you remember, we're looking for that object to have a text property. So we're going to pass in an object here where the text is hello feathers. Awesome. Let's create another message. So it'll work exactly the same way. We'll say app.service messages.create. We'll give it a text property. We'll say hello again. Awesome. And then we can tap into our find method. So because we created two messages, now when we call find, we should get an array with both of those messages inside of it. So let's do that. So I'll say const messages equals await app.service messages dot find, and that should give me back the array of messages, and then we'll just log them out. So I'll say all messages and pass in the messages array. Awesome. Now, when I run this code, nothing will happen because I need to invoke this main function. So we'll call the main function when I run this code. But essentially what will happen is our service will be registered. We have this listener here waiting for when any message is created. And then we create some messages. So when I create the message here, we should see this message that a new message was created because it's listening behind the scenes. Same thing here. And then we should be able to find all of them and log them out. So let's give it a try. So in our terminal, we'll do node app.js, and that'll run our code with node. Let's see what happens. There we go. So we see these logs. A new message has been created. A new message has been created. And then we see all of the messages. Now, this is it for our super simple example of a Feather service. And you'll notice here, we're not using REST, we're not using sockets. We're really just talking about the fundamentals of how Feathers works. And what's really cool about all of this is eventually we'll be able to expose this service as a REST API or as a real-time API. Thanks for watching. I think I did it. There were some slight mistakes, but I think that's totally fine. What do you all think? How horrible was that? Where's the chat? Doo 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 doo. Oh, interesting. Avi is saying, I think Brave blocks Ajax requests from the console? Weird. I mean, I guess that's a security feature because, like, sometimes website or, like, so if somebody's trying to, I don't know, like, hack you, they'll say, like, go to facebook.com and put this in the dev console and they could, like, steal your credentials, but interesting. uh... Mulder says, CJ, you are the best. I appreciate that. Cool. Hello from Ecuador. Hello, David. Welcome. Hello, Matcha. Did you already say hello? Oh, yeah, there you are. Katoli and Eddie say, good, you're a pro, nice one. Why not async function main? I'm trying to follow the Feathers doc. So if you look in their quick start guide, they are creating an arrow function here. I mean, I do think for beginners, this is a little bit tricky because there's a lot of syntax involved here. We could technically write it as, so what Avi is mentioning is instead of creating this variable here, we could actually say async function main like this. And ultimately, this will work exactly the same way. It's just a different syntax. There are some other implications, like technically, when I write it this way, I cannot access the main function above it. I can only access it below it. But for the purposes of this tutorial, it's fine. Okay, people said they can follow pretty easy, and I think it's okay. You have my little flubs. I'm making typos while I'm typing, but I fix them in real time. It's only bad if I don't catch the typo and then I have to come back like 3 minutes later to fix it. So yeah, I think that was good. We will move on to the next tutorial. And hello, Linus. Welcome to the stream. Okay. Yeah, so the next part of the tutorial is taking this very basic service that we wrote and exposing it as a REST and socket API. So that will be fun. Let's do it. Full screen this. Center this. Clear the screen. Minimize this. I think I'm ready. Just a second. Okay. Hide my face. Nobody wants to see me. I mean, some people do, but here we go. In this tutorial, we will take the message service, which we created in the last tutorial, and expose it as a RESTful API and as a socket-enabled real-time API. So the first thing we'll need to do is install some dependencies. We'll install @feathers.js /express, and we'll also install @feathers.js /socket.io. Now, these two packages are going to enable us to turn this basic service into something that we can actually call from a REST client or a socket client. Now that we have those dependencies, we'll bring them in. So up at the top here, we'll say const express equals require @feathers.js /express. And then we'll create another variable called socket.io. And that's going to be equal to require @feathers.js /socket.io. Awesome. Now I'm going to move this app creation below the message service because we're going to have to do some extra stuff here. So I'm going to move it there. And now we can actually tap into some of the features of using this as a RESTful API. So now instead of creating a Feathers application directly, we actually want to create an Express application like so, and then pass our Feathers application into it. And this essentially enables Feathers to interact with Express, and it adds a few things on top of it to allow us to use our Feathers service with Express. And now you'll note here we are bringing Express in from @feathers.js, so this isn't the just straight Express package, but it's just simple wrapper on top of built by the Feathers.js team. So here we'll create the Express app, pass Feathers into it, And now we'll set up some middleware just like you would with an Express application. So first thing I'll do is say app.use. I'll say express.json. This is a JSON body parsing middleware. So if we are making post requests to our server with JSON data, this will know how to interpret that. We'll also set up express.url encoded, and we'll pass extended true. And this is a middleware that will parse incoming form data. So when REST clients are sending data to our server, these two middlewares will know how to interpret it. We'll also set up a static serve. Oop, I have a typo, app.use. But below that, I'll say app.use express.static. And we will serve up this current directory. Now, right now, we aren't going to be doing any static serve, but in the next tutorial, we will build a simple client that will be served from this Express app. So this static serve will be able to serve up those client files. And now we have our basic middleware set up. We're actually going to configure our application to use the REST protocol through Express and the socket protocol through the socket.io package. And for that, we'll use app.configure. This is my break timer. Let's take a quick stretch. If you're sitting at home, go ahead and stand up. Stretch your arms. Move your hands away from the keyboard. All right, back to it. So we'll say app.configure, and we'll pass in express.rest. Now, with this one line of code, we have now enabled our services to be available over a RESTful API. And below that line, we'll also say app.configure. Configure with socket.io. And with this one line of code, we have now exposed our Feathers application over sockets. Awesome. Now, line 33 is going to change slightly. Instead of saying app.use messages, we're going to say app.use/messages. And you can think of this like registering a route in Express. Now, all of our messages service will be available as RESTful routes at the /messages route. And that's how we register the service. But anywhere else, we'll still be able to access the service as messages. Cool. And the last thing we'll do is use the error handler provided for us by the Express Feathers package. So we'll say app.use express .error handler. And this is just a slightly nicer error handler than the built-in Express one, which is provided by Feathers in their wrapper on top of Express. So that's great. And now I'm actually going to delete all of the code here that was creating messages and retrieving messages. We'll write that again, but we're going to clean that up for now. And the first thing I'll do is set up our socket channels. So I'm going to say app.on connection. And now this will get called anytime a client connects to our app. And we're going to get access to the connection. And then inside of here, we're going to join that connection to the everybody channel. So we'll say app.channel everybody.join connection. And so when a socket client connects to our application, this now puts them in the everybody channel. And then what we'll do is anytime an event happens, so anytime, in our case, a message is created, we'll publish that event to everyone in the everybody channel. So below this, I'll say app.publish. And here, I'm just going to say app.channel everybody. And now the app.publish function registers a function that returns the channel that they should be, that should receive that particular message. So in this case, I'm just returning the channel. Under the hood, it's going to know to alert everyone that's in that channel. Now, last thing we'll do is listen on port 3030. So I'll say app.listen 3030. And then when we are listening, we want to run this simple callback function that just logs to the console. We'll say feathers server listening on localhost 3030. Awesome. And this is our Feathers application now exposed over sockets with these lines of code and this line of code, and now exposed over REST with this line of code and this line of code. Easy enough to just see that in action. If I say app.service messages, And then we will create a new message. Hello world from the server. So typically you wouldn't do this. You would like make a REST. So typically you wouldn't do this. You would make a request to the backend to create a message with potentially a post request. But for now, we're just going to create that so we can actually see this in action. So this creates a message. So now if I were to retrieve messages, we should see one message in that message array. So now I will start up the application and we should see it's listening on localhost 3030. So let's open that up. First, we see cannot get slash because we actually haven't set up the slash route and we don't have any static file like index.html to serve. But if you remember, we exposed this as a RESTful API on slash messages. So if I visit slash messages, we should get the array of messages. As simple as that. Now, of course, you don't want your users just viewing JSON in the browser. You want them to use a web client. And so in the next video, we'll build a super basic client that allows us to list all the messages from the servers and see new incoming messages and create messages. So we'll see you there. That's going to require like a little editing. You can see I paused for a second and then restated the thing. But yeah. Yeah, Katoli says remember to remove your timer. I might cut that out, but I don't know. It's only 10 seconds. Sometimes we just need to take a break. You don't want to just go straight through a tutorial. Cool. Hello, Hexception. Welcome to the stream. Avi is asking, will you make an actual application using feathers with conventions and stuff? Yeah, so another part of the feathers guide is creating a more robust real-time chat application that actually uses a data store. So I will be building that. But I need to get through all of the tutorial before I start building other types of applications. But I definitely do want to. Action! And they mean, will I demonstrate how to make a real-world application that uses feathers? Yes, I absolutely want to. I've done videos in the past. Like if you've seen the Trello clone videos, that was using feathers. I did some pairing sessions with my friend Chad where we're starting to build a question answer application. But yes, in the future, I will build more stuffs. Hello, Takadine. Welcome to the stream. Hello, David, who says, great. Thank you. Hello, Resmed. Hello, Gustavo. Welcome. Programming with Peter says, feathers is nice. Glad that I found your channel and see it in action. Glad to hear it. Avi says, it's interesting how on blocks 37 through 39, I use curly braces, so here. And then on line 41, I went with a one-liner. I am literally going by what's in the guide. I do agree that it's, especially for beginners, it's, you don't necessarily want to mix syntax like this because it's harder to grok what's happening. Like this. The other thing I did, which isn't in the guide, is I didn't actually include data because that variable isn't even used. So when I wrote it, I just used parentheses. But you do have a point, Avi. Like this is basically an arrow function that only does one thing. So technically we don't need the curly braces. Same thing here. And in this one, we didn't add the curly braces. I'm really just going by what's in the guide. Linus says, well done, CJ, thank you. Bohan is asking, could you explain how closures works? Yes, let's take a detour to closure land. Here we go. Oh, let me do that. Yeah, it's hard to see when I'm in front of the code. Closures. Only because I think it's fun. Like closures are great. Like it's a beautiful feature of the JavaScript language that really enables you to do things that you can't necessarily do in other languages or that have other ways of doing it in other languages. But yeah, let's talk about closure. I typically like to use like an example with an add function. I feel at this point it's been like overused. Let's just do it really quick and see if I can come up with something else to use though. But let's say you have a function called add, takes in a and b, and then just returns a plus b. Simple enough. And then let's just run that function, and we're going to say add 1 and 2. The answer should be, that's where everyone says 3. I'm going to start up Quokka just so we can see the stuff running. And so we should see, yes, it logs to the console 3. Great. Now, what if we wanted to make, I don't know, like a utility function or something like that, that can add numbers to a given number? So that's our basic add function. Let's do this. Oh, and actually we'll comment that out too. So we have our function add, but we're going to return a new function that takes in b and returns a plus b. And our add function is only going to take in a. Now, I mean, I guess technically I can write this on the same line. It's all the same, people. It's all the same. But okay, so add is a function that takes in a number and then returns a new function that also takes in a number, but when that function is invoked, it takes the original number you passed in and adds it to b. This is an example of a closure. So it's called a closure because the outer function closes over the scope of the inner function, and even after we invoke this function, the outer one, later on, the inner function still has access to a. Let's see it in action. So, and actually, let's call this like create adder. And so we'll say create adder with 5. And we'll call this the 5 adder. Great. But now we can use 5 adder because if we read this line of code, it says invoke create adder with the value of 5. Okay, when we invoke this function, it's going to return a new function that now has the value 5 in scope. So because that returns a function, 5 adder now has a function inside of it. So it's literally, it's not a function invocation, it is a function, which means on this line of code, we can say 5 adder, and we can pass in 10. And so what this does is any number you pass into it, it's going to add 5 to it. So we can add, I don't know, and here's something to think about. So, okay, I called it once, and it gave me back the value 15. If I call it again, am I going to get a different value, or is it still going to add 5? It still just adds 5. So this is a closure because this function saves the value of a. So when I invoke this the first time, I passed in 5. So it saves that value, and now any other time we invoke this inner function, it still can hold on to that value. So it's a closure. And actually, if we run this code in a debugger, I think the Chrome debugger, the debugging tools, will actually show you where that closure scope is. But the other interesting thing is we can create adders all day. So let's create a 10 adder. Pass in the value 10. Now that holds on to the value 10, and I can invoke this later on. 10 adder with 20. Create adder. And 10 plus 20 is 30, right? But again, I can call this all day long, and it's not affected by previous invocations. 10 and 10 is 20. So this is a closure. The scope of the outer function closes over the scope of the inner function. Yeah. And actually, let me try to run this with the debugger really quick. Quokka stop. Debug. Go? Node. Yeah, so it just ran. Cool. But what I want to do is put a breakpoint right there and then run the code again. So it should stop. Use node. All right, it stops on this line of code. Awesome. So when this line of code runs, it's going to invoke this function, which then returns a new function. So let's press this button. We're going to dive into that function invocation. We can see currently the local scope A has the value of 5, and then it's going to return that function. And now that function is stored here. It'll do the exact same thing. Now, currently the local scope, the A value is 10, returns the function, and now we get back here. Now, watch what happens when we actually invoke that 5 adder. Go in, and we see closure. And we can see that the closure has held on to the value of A, so A is 5. I realize the text is really tiny, but trust me, A is 5. And so that invokes it. And that's great. And then when 5adder gets invoked again, well, we don't want to go in there, but when 5adder gets invoked again, now if we look at the closure, the value of A is still 5. But then when we get to the 10adder, get out of here. This is like diving into the console log method, which is what I don't want to do. And then when we dive into 10adder, if we look at its closure, the value of A is 10. So in terms of like the JavaScript engine, it actually holds on to those closures. It's like a little scope. It's a scope of variables. And later on, when another function gets invoked, it can use that scope. Okay, that was a fun little detour. Thanks for playing. Bar was saying the dots are not really visible in your VS Code theme. Do you mean like the periods here, like the red value? Is that what you mean? I've been using this theme for a very, very long time. Programming with Peter is asking, where is it? Where is it? Oh, yeah. Do I have an opinion on Meteor? I've only stumbled across Meteor. Break timer. Meteor.js, I think that's it. I think maybe I tried to build one app with it. It's interesting. So at least when I tried to use it, it's an isomorphic framework, meaning you write code that actually will run both on the client side and the server side, but the execution engine decides when and where that code is running. And I think you can have like an if block and say like, if I'm on the server, run this, but if I'm on the client, run this. So that's super interesting. And it does enable you to build real-time applications fairly quickly. Guide. Let's see. Getting started on Windows, getting started on OS X. So you install Meteor, you create an app. Okay, I won't be able to see exactly what it does in just the guide. But so yeah, I think it's interesting. I personally don't really like to code that way. I do like to keep things separate, but I really haven't used it much to be able to talk about it. But it is one thing to like compare it against Feathers, because Feathers, while you can write what looks like the same code on the client side and the server side, it is still two totally separate client and server applications. It's just they've created the library in a way that allows you to use the same library on the front end and on the back end. So there's that. Yeah, let's keep moving. Matcha says, I love detours. Avi's asking, did I pay for Quokka? I haven't, but I probably should. When you pay for Quokka, you get extra features. So most of the time when I'm demoing code with Quokka, I'm not requiring in external packages. So I can use it, I can log stuff all day. But when you start to try to use it with a larger application that is requiring in external packages, it actually won't turn on. And that's when you need the pro version. And they have some really nifty features where you can do things like, let's open it back up. Yeah, usually you can do that, I think. Yeah, which instead of having to console log something, it'll just show you the result of the expression. But live comments and live value display are only supported in the Pro edition. I think I can enable like a quick trial just to show it happening. Quokka. Switch to Pro edition. Oh yeah, and so I get a free trial, but now I should be able to do that. And it shows me that the result of this line of code is a function, a Lambda function. And then if I didn't put this in a console log, I just invoked it like that. If I do this, I can see the result of that invocation is 15. So when you buy the Pro version, you get cool features like that. I recommend it. I haven't bought it myself, but I do recommend it. It's really great. Stop it. Snail is asking, what is the extension that says not defined on VS Code? Oh, so like if I try to call something that's not defined? It's usually just ESLint. I don't think I have my linter rules enabled right now. But yeah, usually like ESLint and VS Code will just inform you when you're trying to use things that don't exist. Orlando says, wow, this is weird. Welcome to the weird coding garden. Or is the code weird? Is that what you're saying? I don't know. Hello, Gabriel. Welcome to the stream. Peter, Programming with Peter says, greatly explained. I appreciate that. But I do admit this is a very contrived example, because how often do you do something like this in your real code? You don't. Things like this are very useful in React. Trying to think. Yeah, and actually, you will actually use closures when you're working with feathers, when you're creating hooks, reusable hooks, because you might need access to some value. I don't know. Go search YouTube for closures. Lots of people have done other great videos on it. But like, let's say you're using like a map function or for each function. That function you're passing into it potentially reuses the exact same value. So you could create a function that takes in the value, which returns a new function, which will you pass to the map or the for each. You know, check out Fun Function. I know he has really good videos on closures. Katoli is saying you can emulate decorators with the closures. It also lets you create private methods. Yeah, so actually, okay, yeah, let's get beyond this like super contrived example. And there's actually this thing in JavaScript called the revealing module pattern. So let's say I have this thing called like, what do we want to do? We want to create, what do we want to create? Create cat, yeah, let's call this the cat creator. And ultimately, our cat is going to be an object. And ultimately, our cat is going to get access, or is going to get created with a name. And that object we return is going to have the name on it. But let's say we have this function that we want to reuse called say hello. And this is a function that just logs to the console, hello from name. And now we're going to expose that say hello function on the cat that we're creating. So ultimately, this is going to return an object. It gives us access to those two things. And actually, we need to do that. That's the correct syntax. Let's also do something weird here. We'll call it the emoji name. I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but basically I want to show like you can create a variable, you can access it later, but it's not actually accessible from the outside world. And that is what Katoli is getting at in terms of private methods or private variables. Yeah, let's do this. So emoji name is a simple little function that returns your name with emojis on both sides of it. So we're going to have the cat emoji, put the name in, and then we're going to have the rainbow emoji. Cool. And now instead of saying the name directly, we'll say emoji name right there. This is also an example of a closure, and let's watch it in action. So I'll say Fred is a new cat, so we're going to use the cat creator. His name is Fred. And now if I say Fred dot say hello, it should log its name to the console. Let's start up Quokka. Switch to the community version. Do I have an error? Oh, well, let's comment this code out. Oh, I think I just need to start it again. Unexpected character. Oh, I need to put that in quotes. Cool. There we go. We should see, does this log to the, oh, you know what? I'll put this on a new line so we can actually see that it logs. Cool. So when I say hello right here, it logs to the console, hello from Fred, but it adds those emojis. But the interesting thing about this, and this is one of those things I mentioned where like closures are really awesome because it is essentially a way of creating private methods or private variables. So you see how I have this emoji name function right here? Because I did not expose it on this object, I can't actually say do Fred.emoji name. That's not a thing. We don't have access to it. So in the terms of this code, that method is private, and it's only accessible inside of here. But this is also a closure because this function returns, and now the outside world has access to this object. But then later on, when we invoke this function, it still has access to name, so it closed over name. So that's a closure too. Private variables. Okay, I need to stop. I'm procrastinating. I'm procrastinating the feathers tutorial is what I'm doing. Let's go to there. Linus says, I finally understand closures. Thanks, CJ. You're welcome. Matcha is saying I should cut it. Maybe I will. It'll be a fun little quick tip. Closures. I saw some YouTube creator videos, though. They're actually eventually going to be releasing a live clip feature. So you know how on Twitch, when someone's streaming, anyone can clip like the last 30 seconds or the last minute, and it creates a new video? Eventually, they're going to add that to YouTube. So that will actually be pretty fun. Orlando is asking, can you show us production projects? Eventually, and I think the best way to show that is potentially showing like an open source project. I can't really show any of the stuff I'm working on at work, but a lot of open source projects are production level, and that would be good to look at. See you later, Katoli. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, Peter is saying that's why he asked about Meteor, because it seems that it was inspired by it. It's a similar idea in that it's like a framework for building real-time applications, but there are some major differences. Orlando says, oh, I meant the code, of course. That's cool. Avi is saying, how is the function cat creator different from using a class? Did I close that code again? I did. Let's open it back up. So for all intents and purposes, if this is all of the code that I was looking at, it's really not that much different. And actually, like, that line of code doesn't work. It's really not all that different from a class. However, when you're using a class, all of the instances share the same reference to the functions. And in this case, you'll notice when this function gets invoked, it creates two new functions. So now every time I create a cat, this cat is called Henry. Henry.say hello. Now, both Fred and Henry have their own copy of emoji name function and say hello function. So I'm actually using more memory because each one of these is using these functions. Technically, I could define these outside the function, and then for things that need access to the name, I could bind them. But then if I wanted to bind them, I couldn't use arrow functions. I'd have to use like an actual function. But that's one of the things about classes is all of your instances will share the same reference to the function. It's just when it's invoked, it binds the context to be that specific instance, which this is not doing. Everyone gets their own functions. And for small programs like this, it's totally fine. But in larger things, you would want a class or something like that. Yeah, I believe this is called the revealing module pattern, and there are some JavaScript peoples out there that prefer it to doing this rather than doing things like class-based programming. JavaScript revealing module pattern. That's too much code. Yeah, so you've got these functions. One of them's private, and you return an object that only gives you access to the public functions, which is what I just did with that cat creator. And this is the revealing module pattern. It's a design pattern. There you go. You learned a design pattern. Yeah, too much code. Hot tips with CJ. Hello, Alana. Welcome to the stream. Mono says, it's about 1 a.m. in India. Well, hello, Mono, and I hope you get to sleep soon, but thanks for tuning in. Whoa, obviously in the new Chrome, you can create private functions with this syntax. Let's see. TC39 private functions. So this is most likely a, proposal, private methods. Is there a, oh, wait. I don't want to look at the issue. I just want to look at the proposal itself. It's stage 3, what? Which means it'll be released in the official version most likely next year. JavaScript 2020, we get private methods. Okay, custom elements with classes, field declarations. Okay, great, private methods. Look at this weird syntax. I remember, I think I saw some Twitter wars where people were like, I hate this syntax, but it looks like it's already stage 3, so it's probably going to make it into JavaScript. But this pound symbol is going to give you private methods. That's great. Good to know. Thanks, Avi. Bohan is asking, what are other useful patterns in JavaScript? One that I use, if you watch the Code Kata stream, this is one that I use all the time. It's taking an array of things and indexing it by some ID. That's super, super common in JavaScript. So let's take a quick stretch. This is turning into just a questions and answers, but this is fun. It's the weekend. I get to do what I want. I want to talk about coding fun things. So let's say I have an array of books, and each book has an ID like 12 and an author. Let's think of some authors. Douglas Adams. Title, Hitchhiker's Guide. This has another ID. Oh, actually, this of course should have the ID 42. This one will have the ID 13. The author is Kyle Simpson. And actually, I don't know if this is a pattern, but this is something I see myself doing all the time. And so as a JavaScript programmer, you should get used to it. And the title is you don't know JS up and going. One more. ID is 18. The author is, I don't really read books, honestly. Let's do Douglas Crockford. And the title is JavaScript. Good parts. Cool. All right. Now, the thing that I'm talking about, or the pattern, is, okay, you take this array of items and you turn it into an object. So we're going to turn this into an object where the keys are the ID, and then the values are the book itself. So it has like author, title, etc. So we take this array, we turn it into an object where the keys are the IDs, the values are the books themselves. And this is really useful because you don't have to keep searching through the array all the time. So let's write the code to do that. So we'll write it with a for loop, and then I'll show you how to do it with a reduce. So basically, I want books by ID. And it's an object, right? It starts out with nothing. And then I need to iterate over this array. And for every element, I'll create a key that is the ID and set it equal to the value. So create a for loop. We'll go from I, well, I is less than books.length. We can create a book variable that is equal to array at that index. Awesome. And right here, we'll say books by ID at book.id equals book. Done. And then right here, I can just log books by ID. And we should get a nice little object where the keys are the IDs and the values are the books. Let's do it. Array is not defined. It should be books. Look at that. Key is the ID. The value is the book. And now this is awesome because if for some reason I have the ID, I can instantly say just like Hitchhiker's Guide is books by ID at 42. Instantly. I don't have to find in the array. I don't have to do anything. I can just pick it out by ID. And that should give us hitchhiker's guide. I spelled that wrong. But regardless, you'll notice I didn't have to do a find. I just instantly get it. So that's why this is really useful. To see this done with a reduce, we'll do it like this. Let's comment this out. And so when you're doing a reduce takes an array and reduces it down to a single value. That value can be anything. In this case, the single value that I'm reducing to is this object, right? So I'm going to say books.reduce, and the first value in this reducer function is called your accumulator. It's the thing that you're building up. Ultimately, we're building up this object that is by ID, and then we get access to each book, and then we do the thing. But the other part of reduce is the initial value, and just like above, the initial value was an empty object. Now the initial value is an empty object. Now I can take this code that's inside the for loop, put it in my reduce, but the end of a function in a reduce, I always need to return the accumulator. And this is going to be by ID now instead. And it works out the same way. But now it's like one line of code, or a couple lines of code. But basically, we take an array, create an object where the IDs are the keys, and set equal to the value. And then we get back the same thing, which is cool. Okay, I'm done procrastinating. Like, this is procrastination. This is what I'm doing right now. But hopefully you found it fun, because I find it fun to explain. Man on the Run has a good question. What's the difference with the factory pattern? I don't know. Because, I mean, a factory is something that creates things, right? It creates, you can think of it as it's like an assembly line. It just pumps out stuff. It's a factory. And that function we created earlier is kind of like a factory because it returns objects, right? It's an object factory or a cat factory. But let's see. How is that different from the factory pattern? I don't know. Factory functions and the module, maybe they're the same thing. Yeah, this is the module pattern. Great. The revealing module pattern. Great. Did we talk about factories? The factory pattern. A factory pattern is a pattern that uses factory methods to create objects without specifying the exact class or constructor function from the object that will be created. Okay. Oh, I see. So it's not just creating objects, it's some custom logic that will create a different instance of an object based on that custom logic. So the vehicle factory will create cars based on the options that are passed in if it's a car, and car's a class, or it will create trucks based on the options that are passed in. That's an interesting distinction. Cool. All right. Yeah, I think Programming with Peter is talking about using the pound symbol as the private identifier. But yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Like, there are only so many characters that we can use, so what do we choose? Hello, MS Pistek, who says, just click this video to see what's going on, and I'm going to stay because it's very engaging. Great explanations. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, Conrad. Matcha says, I could watch CJ paint a wall and I wouldn't be bored. I could turn it into the Huckleberry Finn scenario where, like, he's painting and he just, like, pretends like he's having so much fun, and then people pay him so they can paint instead. I don't know. Yeah, thanks for tuning in too, Peter. Matcha's saying, I listen to books but don't retain anything. I used to listen to a lot of audiobooks. I haven't done that recently. I used to have a longer commute. But yeah. Fun JS with CJ, my favorite kind of fun. Oh, Avi's saying it's funny how JavaScript is evolving to become ActionScript. JavaScript. Mono is asking, why do I use DuckDuckGo? I mean, when there's Google, I kind of bounce back and forth between them. But DuckDuckGo has the tagline, "We don't track you." And so I like that about it. And I also, it's very programmer friendly. So they actually have these things called bang commands. So if you type the exclamation mark, you can search across any one of these websites. So for example, if I want to search GitHub for feathers, I could do that. And that actually jumps me to github.com with a search for feathers, which is cool. So I use that a lot. You can also, like, there's a bang command for MDM, array for each. And that will jump me over to Mozilla Developer Network. So that's cool. But in terms of the search engine itself, they're a smaller company than Google. They do respect your privacy. And so I like that about them. However, a lot of times, or sometimes, the search results aren't exactly what you need. Oh, another cool thing about it is if I say how to split string in JavaScript, if it finds results from Stack Overflow, usually it will embed them. I don't know why it stopped doing that. JavaScript array find. I don't know. Maybe I need to enable it, but it used to actually embed like the top answer of Stack Overflow up at the top, which is also cool. But again, if I want to jump out to Google, you can do bang G, and that will go to Google instead. Cool. Pranjal is asking, how often do I use TypeScript in Node? I don't. I don't know. TypeScript is becoming so popular. I feel like there are just so many enterprisey devs that have been doing C# and Java that are now being forced to write JavaScript, and they're trying to make it more like C# and Java. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great to have types, especially on a larger code base, and with a larger team, it's easier to collaborate and like know what's going on. But at the same time, it takes away from some of the awesome things I like about JavaScript, in that it's like you can express something with very little code, but it still is understandable. It's not terse. And you don't have to jump through hoops to make things happen. It kind of just works for you. So yeah, but I don't use TypeScript at work. I actually know a lot of people that do, and maybe eventually we will. But honestly, I'm holding on to JavaScript without types. Linus is asking, why don't we just write private like every other language? I think you. Oh, instead of the pound? Why not? Yeah, that would have been great. I mean, C# and Java devs would have picked that up easily. Huckleberry Finn is a good analogy for coding tutorials. Yeah, and like I mentioned, sometimes the search results aren't the best, but it's only getting better, which is why I continue to use it. Yeah. All right, see you later, Linus. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, that was a huge detour. When is my next break? 3 minutes. I think I'll just keep talking. I'll take a break, and then I'll come back and record the last part of the tutorial, which is building the client. But yeah, when is the stream a weekly thing? It's kind of sporadic. I'm streaming today. I'll most likely stream again tomorrow. I don't really have a streaming schedule right now just because I'm busy with work and other things like that. But if you, if you subscribe, you'll see the notification when I do go live. But if I do have a stream planned ahead, you'll see it under upcoming live streams. I typically like to create an event ahead of time. Wednesdays are usually code katas, which is just me solving coding problems, and you can solve along too. I did one last Wednesday, but it had been like a month. I'm very inconsistent. But yeah. Oh yeah, and if you follow me on Twitter too, I tweet every time I go live, so you can see that. Typically, like if you're in Europe or Asia or India, wait, what time is? I thought it was like not nighttime in India. Oh wow, it's 1 a.m. in India. So usually I might stream a little bit earlier on the weekends at like, I don't know, 8 or 9 a.m. my time, which is, I guess, the evening for people in India. Yeah. Oh, cool. Destruction of Humankind says, got my Red Dragon keyboard now. It's really great. Thanks for the recommendation. I'm glad you like it. So this is not the Red Dragon. I've had this one for like over a year now, but I have the Red Dragon in my office upstairs and I really like it. Ma just says, bring back Tony. I mentioned it, but I'm going to try to find some noobs in the future. Not right now, but I think it would be great to just pair with people in the community. And I can potentially find some more noobs. I thought about, what if I just like get a Lyft or an Uber and then convince that driver to let me teach them how to code? It could come off really weird, but that would make for some interesting videos. Just like totally random people that didn't even know they were going to learn how to code and teach them how to code. Yeah. 44 seconds. Yeah, but for those of you that just randomly tuned in, I actually am creating some tutorials for the Feathers.js guide. We just did this one. When I come back, we're going to build a simple client that talks to that backend. So right now, we can see the messages that are there. We could make a post request to create a message, or we could make a socket request to create a message. But I'm going to do that from the client in just a second. Ooh, Alex says, hello from Greece. I'm working on some image colorizing machine learning exercises and my head is about to explode. Well, I hope it doesn't, Alex, but good luck. Hello, ATD, who says, I would eagerly volunteer to be a Noob Quest. And I think ATD is in the Coding Garden community app. I might start with people there and maybe we pair on the community app. I don't know. Oh, nice. Peter has the Red Dragon keyboard too. Rand says, that sounds too random. Oh, I'd be like a coding Mormon. Yeah, like, preaching the good word of JavaScript. Oh, wait, did I just click ignore on the break timer? Okay, I need to take a break. I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back to do a little bit more tutorial stuff. Let's stop there so I can catch up. I don't know if that timer was right. Maybe it's not. But yeah, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back. Stick around. We'll see you soon. That was the wrong thing. That was the intro video. This. Hello again. We're back. Let's see what people have to say. Yes. ATD says, hope you've been well, CJ. You're doing some amazing things. Appreciate it. Avi is asking, do I know PowerShell syntax? I do not. I've only used it a little bit. Bohan is saying, I should also be streaming on Twitch. I've thought about dual streaming, so it goes to both places. I tried it once with my own multiplexer. So I made a Docker container that accepted a stream and then spit that stream out to 2 places, but it didn't end up working. And I don't really want to give access to some of these rebroadcasting services. I don't know. The one thing about YouTube is the YouTube algorithm suggests my video to people that may not have known about me. So that's why I do YouTube. Oh yeah, and I think it is, Matcha. So if you become a Twitch partner, it's actually in the agreement that you're not allowed to stream on other services. I think you can upload to other services, but you can't stream there. But yeah. Hello, Infi. Welcome to the stream. Ooh, we got people from Croatia and Serbia. That's great. Hello, Emmanuel. Welcome to the stream. Cool. All right. So this next piece of the tutorial is building a front end for this Feathers backend that we created. So let's do that. In terms of notes I need for myself, I'm going to copy these CDN links to use. Yep. And then we'll also need the JavaScript CDN links, these. Like that, cool. I think that's it. Oh no, I did not mean to do smaller. Minimize. Okay. Full screen that. Full screen that. Do I have light server? Oh no, I don't need light server. The Feathers app is automatically going to serve up the front end. Cool. So we'll do that. Let's kill this, clear the console. Yep. All right, I think I'm ready. I'm gonna hide my face. Deep breath. Breathe in. Breathe out. Okay. In this tutorial, we are going to build a browser application that can talk to and connect to our backend Feathers application that we built in the last tutorial. So you'll be able to create a message from within the browser and see all the messages that have been created. So I currently have my Feathers app running on port 3030, so that's good. But what we'll do now is create an index.html file. So let's go to new file. We'll call it index.html. Inside of here, I'll create a basic HTML file. Let's call this hello feathers. And the first thing I'll need to do is bring in some CDN links. So the first 2 are this basic CSS. So I won't be writing any of my own CSS, but these CSS files have all of the things that I need to make me have a decent looking Feathers chat app. So I'm going to bring these in at the bottom of the head right here. Awesome. And then I'll also need some JavaScript. So I'm going to bring in the Feathers client, which is hosted on Unpackage, which is also a CDN, and then the socket.io library. So let's bring those in. And for now, I'm going to put those in the body. Cool. Now let's build out our basic HTML page. So inside of the body, let's create a main element. And this main element will have an ID of main. And it will have a class of container. And up at the top here, I'm just going to have an H1 that says, welcome to Feathers. Cool. So super basic app. Right now we just have an H1. We brought in the basic style, so we should see some styling. Let's open it up in the browser. So now if I go to localhost 3030 directly, I should see welcome to Feathers. Awesome. Now inside of the main here, let's create a form, and this is where the user will submit their message, which we'll receive on the server, and then we'll be able to see all of the messages. So below this, we'll have a form. It will not have an action. This is going to have a class of form, and we'll have our onSubmit function. Our onSubmit function, and inside of here we'll call the sendMessage function. Now this doesn't exist yet. We will have to create our own JavaScript, but for now I'm just referencing it. And one thing we'll do is we'll prevent the default action of the form submission, like so. Awesome. Now inside of the form we need an input. This is where the user will type their message. The type is text, and the ID is message text, and the placeholder will be enter message here. Below that, we'll have a button that they can click to submit their message. So let's create a button. Inside of it, we'll say send message, and on this button, we'll give it a type of submit, and we'll give it a class of button primary. All right, let's save that. If we go back to the browser and refresh, there we go. Basic form. The user will be able to enter their message, click send, and then we should see all of the messages. Let's see if I did this correctly. Cool, yeah, so we're good so far. Now, let's actually create our JavaScript, which will connect to our Feather service on the back end. So below both of the CDN scripts, I'm gonna create my own script tag. And this is where I'll write my client-side Feathers code. So the first thing is we'll create a socket, and this is going to be equal to IO. And I won't have to pass anything in because by default, we are connecting to the socket server that's at localhost 3030. So we should be good there. And then we'll initialize our Feathers app. And you'll notice this is exactly the same way we do it on the back end, but now we're just in front-end code. So I'll say const app equals Feathers, like so. And so now we have a Feathers app on the front end, but now I need to configure it to communicate over sockets. So I'm going to say app.configure. We'll say feathers.socket.io, and we'll pass in that socket variable which we created. And now our client is socket enabled, so it can communicate with our backend over sockets. Now we'll create this send message function, which will actually allow us to send messages to the server. So I'll say async function send message. And first thing I'll do is get a reference to the input. So we see that this input has an ID of message text. So let's say message input equals document dot get element by ID, and we want message text. And then we'll call our service to actually create the message. So I'll say await app.service messages dot create. And we'll pass in the text value to be message input dot value. So this will be whatever the user typed in to the form, and we're going to set that as a text property on this message object. And you'll notice this code is exactly the same as it was on the back end, but now we're just in front end code. And what this is actually going to do is it's going to reach out over the socket protocol to create that message on the back end. Last thing we'll do is we'll just clear out the message input. So I'll say message input dot value equals an empty string. And let's just try it really quick. So here we'll say hello from the client, click send message. It disappears and it got sent to the server. And actually, if we take a look at localhost 3030/messages, we should see there are now two messages. So there's that one that got created on the server and that one that I just created on the client. But now what we want to do is we actually want to show all of those messages on the page. So let's do that. Right below the form, let's add an H2 that says, here are the current messages. We're going to append our messages there. And then we'll create a function which will add a message to the page. So we'll say function add message. This gets access to the message. And then we'll get a reference to our main area here, and then append the message right here below the h2. So we'll say document.get element by ID main, and we'll say it's inner HTML. Let's start over. Yeah, so the thing is, the guide has us just appending HTML, but this is actually a cross-site scripting vulnerability. So I don't want to do that. We're going to create the element. Okay. So the first thing we'll do is create a p tag element, which we can then append to the main element. So I'm going to say const message element equals document.create element, and I want this to be a p tag. And then I'll say message element.text content equals message.text. So we set the text content to be the text of the message, and then we need to append this message element to the page. So here I'll just say document.get element by ID. We want to grab the element with the main ID, and we'll say append child message element. Awesome. So that adds it to the page. But now what we need to do is when the page loads, we need to add all of the current messages to the page. And then whenever a new message is created, automatically add it to the page. So for this, we'll create our main method. And inside of our main method, the first thing we'll do is we'll ask the server for all of the messages. So I'll say const messages equals await app.service messages .find. And if you remember back to our backend code, this actually will return all of the messages. So on the back end, we implemented this service, and when you call the find method, it returns all of the messages. So should be good there. This is going to give us an array of messages. And now what we need to do is iterate over that array of messages and call our add message function, which will add them to the page. So here we'll say messages.forEach add message. And then when the page loads, we just need to invoke our function, and let's see what happens. So if we refresh, now when the page loads, we see all of the messages that are currently on the server. Awesome. So the last thing we need to do is just to listen for when new messages are created and then automatically add those to the page. So right here, I'll say app.service messages .on created. So anytime a message is created, please call my add message function. Awesome. And so now when a message is created, it should automatically add it to the page. Let's try it out. Hello again from the client. Send message. I think I do need to. So earlier on, I said I didn't need to pass in a value here. I think I do. Am I going to start all over? I think I'm going to start all over. Is this the thing I'm missing? Yeah, that worked. Oh, you know what? Is it because I have a question mark there? Oh, it was because of the question mark, I'm pretty sure. Okay, here's what we do. We're gonna restart the server so all the messages disappear, and then we'll edit it. And well, actually, oh no. No, never mind. If I get rid of that and then refresh the page, yeah, see, that works. Okay, cool. Okay, we're gonna restart our server. All the messages should disappear because it's just an array, and when you restart it, it disappears. So hello from the client. I think I had it like that for continuity's sake. Okay, here we go. There's gonna be some pro editing involved, and then I'm gonna say, let's just rewrite this line and we'll edit that in. So the last thing we need to do is listen for when messages are created. So I'll say app.service messages dot on created, and when a message is created, please call my add message function. Awesome. So now anytime a message is created, this function will get called and we should see it added to the page. So we'll go back to the browser. Let's refresh and try again. So we'll say hello world, send message, and then it instantly appears, which is awesome. But the cool thing about this is it is real-time enabled. So if I actually open up two windows and send some messages here, so we'll say hello from the other client, because both of these are listening for messages, when I click send, it appears on both. Awesome. So that's it for building a basic client with Feathers.js. In the next set of videos, we're going to dive a bit deeper. We'll use the generator and really learn the power of Feathers.js and the types of things that you can build with Feathers.js. See you there. The only thing is, if someone watching this video, like, so there was a question mark here, and I think that's what affects the IO listener. Oh no, that works. Maybe I just didn't refresh the page. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't refresh the page. I think it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Because the main issue was, in this code right here, I didn't specify the server to connect to, but typically with Socket.io, it automatically just uses the URL of the thing that you're on. So I think we should be good there. I don't know. I think this was slightly better, excuse me, than the videos I recorded before, but I don't know. If anything, I'll just use the old videos. Let's see. Yeah, everyone's catching up. Question from Peter says it's a bit awkward. I feel like I can fix it in editing. It should be fine. Infi has a question. What do I think about VS Code's new icons and that two of your toolbar icons don't really fit anymore? Let's see. Oh, these icons here. Yeah, it's very interesting because, yeah, I have the Docker plugin, and I think this is the Git Lens plugin, and now they don't match the style of the built-in plugins. I never thought about it, but it actually is pretty weird. To me, though, I do like the new icons. Like, they look cleaner to me. Like, they're, yeah, they just look cleaner. And maybe these other extensions will need to update their icons to match the style. But yeah. Infi is asking, this was the third video that I did. And I still don't know if I'm happy with it, but I think it'll do just fine. We need to get into the the next videos because those are more involved. Yeah, I had for those of you that are just tuning in, I had an idea where I call like an Uber driver or a Lyft driver, and then when I get in the car, I convince them to let me teach them how to code on stream, which could end up being really weird. Hello, Wasser. Welcome to the stream. Shalar is saying, I think they did that inner HTML thing just for the sake of simplicity. Yeah, but does anyone want to see a cross-site scripting vulnerability? Let's check it out. So if we didn't do this here, if we just said document.getElement.id main.inner HTML. Oh gosh, what's happening? Text is too big. Dot inner HTML plus equals a p tag with message.text. Cool. So what this does is it takes the inner HTML right here and then overrides it with itself plus a p tag. So instead of creating the element and appending it, we're just like overriding the HTML. And this should still work in the same way. Like it still works, right? Hello works great. But what if I were to send it a script tag that has an alert inside of it? Pwned. Go. Did it not work? Did I get an error? Is it automatically it can't be automatically filtering. Here, let's debug the socket. So if I click on network and I click on WebSockets and I refresh the page, I don't want to preserve the log. Here, we should be able to see the incoming and outgoing messages. So if I say hello, send, so we see the socket message, which creates a message, and then we see the socket message, which says message created. Awesome. So what happens if I try to create, actually, if we request the one from the server? Yeah, there it is. Script, alert, pwn. Oh! Wait. Did I not refresh the page? Maybe I didn't do alert right. Because it's on the page. Do I got a JavaScript error? We are going to we're going to exploit this cross-site scripting vulnerability. It's there. It's just not executing. Maybe I need to set the type of the script. Oh, you know what? I could also do an image. Let's find a cool image. Feathers. Hopefully nothing weird pops up. Yeah, let's do this. Let's do this one. We're gonna grab the source. Is it a GIF? Yeah. Cool. And so if I send it an image with a tag, go, look, we get an image on the page. So this is like slightly cross-site scripting vulnerability, because if I take advantage of the fact that images have onload function, so we'll do this again. Actually, let's find a different GIF. Oh, that's cool. Let's do this one. Is this a GIF? Cool. Okay, so we're gonna set the GIF source to be this, but I'm also gonna give it an onload function. When it loads, it will run this JavaScript. Pwned. I think that'll do it. Go. Yes! Pwned! So now we see the image there, which is great, but the bad thing about this is if anyone else comes to the page, it's going to run that script. So that script could potentially grab our credentials from local storage or from a cookie and like send it off to some server somewhere, which is why we don't want to directly insert HTML into the page. Instead, we want to do this. And now watch what happens if we do this instead. Let's take a quick stretch. But now, instead of modifying the HTML, if we set the text content, that's actually just going to set the text. So instead of actually trying to render whatever is inside of there, we'll just see the text. So now if I do that, now we just see the people trying to pwn our app. So yeah, that's a cross-site scripting vulnerability. And it's a stored cross-site scripting vulnerability because technically this is stored on the server side, and then when someone else comes to the site, it will actually run that code. Yeah, pro editing. I should be able to do it. Yeah, Emmanuel says I haven't. Maybe I just didn't refresh the page. I'll be able to splice that edit in. No one will know anything went wrong. Yeah. Eddie is saying, I thought you already recorded them okay last week. I made some typos. Like I on the back end, I said app dot use, or said app dot service instead of app dot use, and then I had to go back and change it later. When I was speaking, I said, let's create a folder, but I actually created a file. Hopefully I fixed those couple of things. We should be good. We should be good, though. It was just like these small things that I didn't want to leave in there, so. Buglex2 is saying, is Feathers taking over Vue.js? I would say no. I would say you can use them together. It's not a replacement for it. It's it would be more of the thing that you use on the back end, and it would be the library that you use on the front end to talk to your back end service. Instead of using Axios or Fetch or something like that, you can just bring in the Feathers client. And then there is Feathers Vuex, which lets you integrate your Vuex store with Feathers. So. Abdel Hamid is saying, what about using Socket.io to build a REST API? Should we make all the controllers and the variables inside the socket function or store each new connected user socket? I guess this assumes you're building it from scratch, because if you do this with Feathers, one of the cool things about Feathers is it separates your application code, let's say like your service code, from any particular transport being REST or socket. So with Feathers, you create a service, or you use an existing service that has these functions: find, get, create, update, patch, remove, and you just write your code against that. And then this service can be easily exposed over REST using like the traditional RESTful API stuff. And similarly can easily be exposed over sockets via just events that are emitted. So with Feathers, you don't really have to even think about it that way. It kind of just handles it all under the hood. But if you are writing it from scratch, it's a bit trickier. I don't know if this is still a thing, but I used a library a while back that actually allowed you to create Express-style routes, but use them with sockets. Let's search for it. Socket.io Express router? Or maybe it's like Socket.io router. Let's see. Last published was 5 years ago. So this is probably not the one I'm looking for. Fresh Socket.io router. I mean, this one was last published in 2016. Is this it? I don't think this is it. There's something out there which I think would make your life a lot easier if you're not using Feathers. I want to find it. Give me a second. I'm going to find this. If I look at my commit history, I think actually... Well, actually, I don't know if it'll show me what stuff I've contributed to, but I did make a pull request to it a long time ago. So maybe I can find it. Repositories. Going way back. Way back. Now we're back before 2017. Way back. I do know that my screen is hidden. I just don't know what's in here. Hopefully I have it. Let's see. There's a lot of stuff on my GitHub. Oh, maybe it was... Yeah, it was fresh Socket.io router. Huh. Okay. But the last commit was in 2016. So this is the thing I used a while back. Let's see, do they have a simple example? But the The cool thing about it is basically it exposes your express routes over sockets. Yeah, here's an example. And the other thing is, like, if you're doing authentication in headers and stuff like that with Express, this can handle it. But it's a really old library. I mean, it was last updated in 2016. You could check it out maybe to get an idea. But I recommend if you're doing this kind of stuff, you might as well just use feathers. That's my recommendation. Cool. Buglex2 says it looks more like Java than JavaScript. You might just be seeing the latest features of JavaScript, in that, like, there's like, well, actually, I mean, I guess Java does have Lambda functions now, but Infi is saying, wait, Chrome has a WebSocket sniffer built in? Firefox doesn't have that. Yeah, I haven't used it much, but it's good for debugging. It's not amazing, and the issue with it is, like, okay, let's say I didn't have the Chrome DevTools open, and I refresh the page, and then I open the DevTools, and then I go to Network and WebSockets. I'm not going to see that connection. So you have to have the DevTools open when the socket connection occurs, so that you can actually start to debug it and see what's happening. Like that. Hello, Bart. Welcome to the stream. We are exploiting cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. I just wanted to show why I wanted to do create element instead of modifying the HTML. But yeah. Oh yeah, I lost my hands. Ah! Ah! Yeah, I showed you guys some leet hacks. Leet hacksaw. Hello, Carlos. Welcome to the stream. Infi is saying a WebSocket REST API wouldn't be REST compliant, though, would it? It actually is. So when you expose a Feathers.js service over RESTful API, it actually adheres to the REST protocol. Like, the methods are the right thing, the URLs are the right thing. Yeah. But then when you expose it over sockets, yeah, this isn't, it's not a RESTful API, but it is kind of like a RESTful, well, the idea with REST is it doesn't require any state to be stored on the server, in that every request has, like, all of the information that's needed for that particular request. The thing about sockets is you have a persistent connection to the server. So your server knows, like, what your socket ID is. So in that aspect, it's not really RESTful, but at the same time, all of the methods that are being called and exposed work very similar to how they would work with a RESTful API. It's just a socket event, if that makes any sense. But yeah. Buglex is saying, so Feathers is more like Node.js than Vue.js. So I would say Feathers is, it's hard because Feathers works both on the client and on the server. So you can use Feathers client with Vue.js to talk to a Feathers backend. And then on a Node.js backend, you can use the Feathers library in conjunction with Express to create a RESTful API. But you can also use it in conjunction with Socket.io to make a real-time API. But yeah. Abdelhamid says, thank you, gonna use Feathers from now on. Cool, check it out. If you do need help with it, if you go to if you go to the Feathers website and click help, they have a Slack channel that you can join. You can post on Stack Overflow. You can open an issue if you have an issue. You should be able to get some help. Hello, Wasser, welcome to the stream. Welcome back. I think you were here last week. Hello, Sandeep. Programming with Peter is asking, have I or do I use Feathers in production? I'm trying to think. I had, like, a basic polling app, if you want to call that production, where I had subscribers to the channel that could, like, poll for questions and answers. But personally, I haven't. I do have a project upcoming with my company that will use Feathers and that will be in production, so I can talk more about it then. But Feathers has been around for a pretty long time, and it's fairly stable. I know there's some if you look at the Feathers Slack, there's some people that are having issues with the latest version. There's like some incompatibilities with the older version. But if you're starting fresh, I think it's a great way to go. If you click migrating, that helps with migrating to the newer version. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think we did it. I think there was some salvageable footage in this tutorial, and now we've got scripts all over the place. But what I'm going to do now is get set up for the next part of the tutorial, which is using the generator and going a lot deeper into this stuff. Okay, let's close this. I think I already have a Feathers chat folder. Yeah. Let's move Feathers chat. Cool. Do that. We'll do that. We'll come back to that in a second. Oh yeah, I don't have VS Code open. Hey, no worries, Wasser. Glad you could tune in now. Eddie is asking, would scaling Feathers be easy? It depends on your deployment, but if you check out the Feathers website and you go to the docs and then click on Cookbook, there is this item on scaling. And so this is talking about using the node.js core cluster module, which can scale on a single machine across any number of processors. And there's some configuration you would do on the client to allow for that. And particularly the thing you run up against whenever you're trying to scale a Feathers application is the real-time aspect, because if you have multiple backend servers and you have a socket client that's connected to one, it could send a message that isn't distributed across all of them. So you'd want to make sure you set this up. And then there's a community library called Feathers Sync that essentially gives you a messaging queue that all of your socket server instances plug into. And it can use MongoDB, Redis, or RabbitMQ to have that messaging queue, so that way you don't lose any messages and all of your instances get access to those messages. So you can use that. I think in a future stream, it would be fun to try and scale it. Like we could create a Kubernetes cluster and have a socket, have a Feathers app on it and see if we can make it work. That would be fun. Yeah. There's a redacted message. Matcha is asking, out of curiosity, how did you manage to convince people at work to use Vue? I'm curious how that pitch would look like. Mainly because I'd been working there long enough, and they trust my technical decisions. Because I've been there almost a year now, and all of the apps I've worked on so far have been React. But we had this project come in, and it had a lower budget than we would have liked, and a smaller time frame. And really, I was just like, I can write React and I write good React, but I am faster when I'm building things with Vue. It takes less code. It's easier to understand, easier to build on. And so I think using Vue in this case would actually allow us to deliver earlier. So, that was my pitch. It'll vary depending on what your exact scenario is, but yeah. And then same thing with Feathers, almost all of the backends I've worked on so far at my work were pretty much built from scratch with Express. So they have their own made up folder structure. It's kind of MVC style. They're using SQLize for the database models. And it's just a giant code base, and it's kind of a mess. And if we were using Feathers, there would be some structure to the chaos. And I would prefer to use another ORM that's not SQLize, maybe something like Objection.js, which is, I believe there's a community package where Feathers actually supports it. So yeah. Oh, interesting. Infi says the Feathers logo is using the same font as the Express logo. It's probably on purpose. Oh, it definitely is on purpose. Because I mentioned it, like Feathers used to be fairly tightly integrated with Express, but slowly they're getting away from that where you can use anything you want. But yes, look at it. That's great. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, Programming with Peter is mentioning to Matcha that they were the only one using Vue at work too, and they made a live presentation of the framework with some live coding and show how easy it was to get started. Basically forced them to watch, and that convinced them. I think the thing, like there's so I don't know what I don't know what I want to say, but there are a lot of people that write React and that have been writing React for a long time, like it and like doing things that way. And when you try to introduce something new, they may not be open to it. They may be used to how JavaScript-y things are in React versus in Vue. I don't know. I think like objectively, fundamentally, Vue is easier and faster and less code. Like you cannot argue with that. Whereas React is maybe not. I don't know. People are gonna hate me for saying that. Another question from Envy. You made a Vue to-do app, and the tutorial is really made for beginners. Are you planning on a similar thing with React? Feathers plus vanilla even, just same app, different framework. You mean like a to-do app? I guess it would be interesting to make a to-do app with a Feathers backend and like a React front end. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, if you look at my channel, for all the new people watching, I have this website where you can search across videos. I've done a couple of to-do apps, but particularly this one. In this intro to Vue and creating a to-do app, I don't use the CLI, I just like show the basic concepts of Vue. But in this intro to React one, I not only show the basic concepts of React, but we go a little bit deeper and we create separate components and we use props and we pass things around and it gets like a lot more complicated. And I've never actually done anything like that with, well, I mean, I've done a lot of other Vue apps, but I haven't created like a more complex to-do app with Vue. So something like that will happen in the future for sure. Bug is asking, am I going to do any more Vue streams? Yeah, I think eventually. I mean, honestly, the next thing you'll probably see is React, though. I kind of want to do potentially a Trello clone with React hooks on the front end and like a Feathers back end, but we'll see. Wasser is saying, lately my dad explained to me how feathers work, and I compared it to my recent stream. It's a bit hard to understand for a 13-year-old. Yeah, I mean, especially if you haven't been programming that long, or if you haven't really used any of these other frameworks like Express. So I did make a prerequisites video last time, but if you're just getting started with feathers, if you have worked with Express before, it can help because a lot of those concepts are here, and it's going to make a lot of these things make a bit more sense. You don't necessarily need it because Feathers kind of has it all built in, but it couldn't hurt to know that kind of stuff. So. Oh, Impy says, yeah, so check, did I share this site? Yeah, check out this site. You can search for across all of my videos, and there are some popular things that people like to request or watch up top. So if you click it, it'll instantly filter. If you click React, you can see all of the videos I've done on React. I also do an intro to Redux. A lot of people ask this, but my intro to React is still totally relevant. It doesn't use hooks, but all of the concepts still apply in React. I think I made that about a year ago. Yeah. Yeah, Programming with Peter is asking about Nest.js. I've heard of it. I haven't used it. Let's take a look. I think, oh, you know what? Does this use TypeScript by default? I think that's why I was instantly like, nope, I don't want to use this. Let's see. Installation, first steps, generate an app, create the project. Yeah, this uses TypeScript by default, which is cool. So we create our, one thing I'll mention about Feathers is the latest version has built-in TypeScript support. And if you go through the guide, anytime there's code, there's a JavaScript tab and a TypeScript tab. And it'll show you how to do it in both ways, which is nice. Controllers. Routing. Yeah, I've heard of it. I haven't used it. The fact that it's like only TypeScript is just it's a personal thing is why I kind of don't like it. Yeah, like decorators. It's just too much. We're in JavaScript. It should be easier than this. But it seems interesting, and it feels like a lot of people are gonna like it. I'll say that. Cool. TypeScript stream win. I've done it in the past. If you search this thing for TypeScript. Yeah, this was one of my very early streams I did a while back, but I give a basic intro to what is TypeScript, how to use it, and then a basic intro to Angular 5 at the time. But anything Angular 2 plus, it's all very similar. I think they're at like version 8 now, but this video is still somewhat relevant. Just say no to TypeScript. Are there any stickers that say that? I no TypeScript sticker. I want a TypeScript sticker with like a red slash through it. Did I spell that right? Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't hate though. Like, I mean, TypeScript has its place, and I know a lot of people like it, but I feel like it's infringing on my rights as a JavaScript developer to not put types and stuff. Cool. TypeScript scream. It's too hot. Yeah, and that's what I mentioned earlier, but Eddie is saying it. People trying to change JavaScript into Java for the old devs getting into front end. And it's kind of what's happening. It's like everything's moving to the web, so you have all these C# and Java developers that are used to building desktop apps or only back-end apps, and now they're put into the front end, and they hate the fact that JavaScript is so loosey-goosey, and they have to actually write good code the first time and not depend on the language itself to write good code. I don't know. I should stop. Like, I don't want to be negative about it, but, you know, it's a thing. Okay, let's stop procrastinating and make some more videos. So now we're gonna get into generating an app. I think I do want to take a break before I get into this, but we're gonna we're gonna do it. Yeah, let's see where we're at. We're 6 minutes away from a long break. Let's install that update. Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a break. We'll be back in 5 minutes to learn more about Feather. We're gonna learn about how you would actually build an app with Feathers. Those videos I did before are really just the underlying concepts and kind of just see it in action. Whereas this, you'll see how powerful it is, how little code it takes to create something very useful. So I'm gonna take a quick break. I'll be back in 5 for more Feathers.js. See you soon. Hello again. I'm back. Boop. All right, let's catch up on the chat. I think we went too far back. Oh, hello, Christian. Welcome. Yeah, hashtag a press script. No, I made the joke earlier. Don't infringe on my rights as a JavaScript developer. Enforce TypeScript upon me, but you know. Wasser is asking what happened to the idea of getting a bunch of free debug stickers and sell them to the world. I wouldn't sell them. I would just give them out. But you can buy them on Redbubble. If you search for free debugs, I'm all about helping other people. Free debug sticker. Debug sticker. It's on here somewhere. This is where I got it originally. Weird. Hopefully I didn't get rid of it. Might have to create one. I could probably look through my order history and find it, but this site usually has it. But yeah, I would just give them out. Let's see. Infi is saying, if you didn't make any, I actually made a no TypeScript logo. See it in live chat. I'm gonna take a look. No, that's great. I would get that on a sticker. And it's MIT licensed. Cool. Here, let me show it. Is it in live? Yeah, it's in live chat. Ta-da! No TypeScript / Love it. Cool. Hello, Emery. Welcome to the stream. Okay, we've procrastinated enough. Thanks, Yoandi. Appreciate that. But yeah, we've procrastinated enough. Let's get into actually building this Feathers app. So we'll make sure that our screen is blank. We'll full screen it. Minimize it for now. Oop, not that. Terminal in the center. All right, here we go. Wait. Okay. Let me just review what we're going to do in this video. So we're going to generate an app. We'll talk through all of the options. We'll talk about the files that get generated. We'll talk about configure functions and running the server. Okay. I think generating the application will be one video, because that will probably take a minute or two as I explain all of the options. And then we'll do a separate video that goes through all of the files that were generated. Okay, that's the plan. Okay, I think I know what I'm going to say. Cool. In this video series, we will build a real-time chat application with Feathers.js on the back end, Feathers.js on the front end, with some vanilla JavaScript mixed in on the front end. I don't like that intro. I'm going to say it again. Hello, in this... I don't want to say hello either. To me, that was what was annoying in my last videos, is when I started it with hello. I don't know if people like that. In this video series, we will build a real-time chat application with Feathers.js. In this first video, we're just going to get set up with the Feathers generator. So what I need to do is do npm i-g at feathers.js/CLI. This will install the Feathers CLI globally on my machine so I can use it to generate Feathers applications. All right, now with the Feathers CLI installed, I'll first create a directory for my project. I'm going to call this Feathers Chat. And inside of this directory, I will generate a Feathers application. So to do that, I'll say Feathers generate app, and is going to ask me a series of questions. I don't want my break timer popping up in there. Let's try that again. Wait. What did I type? Did I get into that directory? Oh, Feathers Chat exists. I thought I moved it. Okay, pardon me. We're going to do some editing. Move Feathers Chat to Feathers Chat. Take one. Cool. So first, I'll create a directory called Feathers Chat. I'll go into that directory. And inside the directory, I will generate a Feathers application. So here I'll say Feathers generate app, and this will ask me a series of questions. So first, do I want to use JavaScript or TypeScript? I'm going to choose JavaScript. For project name, I'll leave that as Feathers Chat. I'll leave the description empty. For what folder should the source files live in, I'll choose the source directory. Which package manager are you using? In this case, I'm just going to use npm, but you can use yarn if you'd like to. And then what type of API are you making? You can see this allows me to either enable or disable any of these options if I press the spacebar. For this app, we'll generate it using REST and real-time via Socket.io. Which testing framework do you prefer? For this tutorial, we'll be using Mocha and Assert for the test, so we'll choose that. And this app uses authentication. For now, I'll choose yes, and this will actually generate a local auth with my application. So by default, we have username and password localauth selected. I could select any one of these OAuth providers if I wanted to. For now, we're just going to use localauth, and later on, we'll actually add GitHub OAuth. What is the name of the user entity service? So this is the service that the authentication service will use to create and manage the users of my application. So I'll leave this as users. And then I can describe what kind of a service is it. So there are tons of built-in database adapters for Feathers.js. You can see NeDB, which is a JSON file-based database. There's MongoDB, Mongoose, Sequelize, Connects, Objection, Cassandra. You could create a custom service or just have an in-memory service. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to choose NeDB. It's super basic to get started with. You don't really have to create a server or anything like that. It'll just write the database to a JSON file. And what is the database connection string? I can leave that as the default, and it will go away and generate my application. Well, it didn't go away. It's still here. Awesome. So the Feathers application has been generated. If we do an ls, we can see all the folders and files it generated. And if we open it up in VS Code, you can see a bit more in detail what it generated. So in the next video, we're going to dive in and talk about what all of these things are that the Feathers generator generated for us. See you there. That's going to require some serious editing, but we'll do it. Quick chat update, and then we'll get back into it because we haven't gotten that far along just yet. Wasser is saying, can I send the website? Just search for Redbubble, redbubble.com. Oh, Matcha said my Discord notifications are coming through. Did they come through whenever I was recording a video? Because that would not be good. I need to disable that. Let's do that one. That's not good. We'll see. Hopefully they didn't come through. Some more pro editing, yeah. Infi says, I like to explain NeeDB like this. NeeDB is to MongoDB as SQLite is to MySQL. Absolutely. So if you know what MySQL is, or sorry, what SQLite is, that's a great comparison. So SQLite is a flat file database, but you can interact with it just like you would like a full-fledged SQL database, but you don't have to set up a database server, it just talks to a file. Same thing with NeeDB, but it's just talking to a JSON file instead. Can anyone let me know, did the Discord notifications come through? Okay, Matcha says they didn't during the recording. I'm gonna go with you on that. That was an easy enough one to re-record if I need to. Hello, Picius? Welcome to the stream from Greece. That's awesome. Okay, next video we're gonna talk about, I think I'm gonna do this honestly one video at a time because it can get pretty lengthy if I just describe this whole thing in one big video. So I'm going to do a video that talks about the config folder. Okay. Here we go. In this video, we will describe what's going on in the generated config folder of your Feathers.js application. So if you take a look at default.json, this has all of the configuration that your application will use. You can see that by default, the host is localhost, the port is 3030. We can specify where the public files are served from. We have some default pagination options. So you'll see that with Feathers services and database adapters, they actually have pagination built in, and we can change the pagination here. We could change the default from 10 to 50 and change the maximum amount. We see some options for authentication as well because we generated this application with authentication. We can tell it which entity it should use when it's creating users, what's the service to use when interacting with users or creating users, any of the strategies that were added, and then the local authentication uses JSON Web Tokens, so we can specify the options for JSON Web Tokens here. We can also see which fields authentication is using for our user. In this case, we're saying the username field is email and the password field is password. You could easily change this to username if you just wanted to use usernames instead of emails, and you could change this to something else if your password field wasn't stored in the password field, but it's totally up to you. And then you can also see for NeeDB, we've configured it to put our data in a folder called data. You'll see that that folder doesn't exist yet, but when we spin up the application, NeeDB will create that folder and the files if they don't already exist. So any options that you would like to customize, you can do here in the default.json file. You can also add custom options and then get access to those in your application as well. And right now we're looking at default, and this is the default options for your application. But if you have different environments, these options can be merged with a separate file. So if we take a look at production.json, we can see that it specifies a host, and it also specifies a port. So when we deploy our application and the node env environment variable is set to production, these options will actually override the default options. Another thing you'll notice here is port in all caps. These configuration files actually allow you to specify environment variables. So instead of specifying a port, typically when you're in a production environment, that port would come from an environment variable. And the configuration service here knows how to, or it knows that when it sees this, it will actually replace it with the environment variable for the given environment. And in here, you could do that as well. We could actually change this secret to be JWT secret. And then we would need to define an environment variable, JWT secret, and give it a value. And the configuration service would know to pick that up. But I'm going to leave it as is for now. We can also see the test environment. Right now, there are no custom options. But later on, we might actually create a new NeeDB connection. So that way, when we're testing, we can specify a test database and not overwrite any changes in our regular database. So that's pretty much it for the config folder. And in the next video, I'll dive into what else is going on in this generated application. I'm back. I'm back. Yeah, Christian is saying bite size is good. I think so too. It could be just a good resource. Like you're trying to figure out, like you just generated an app, maybe you don't want to watch a 10-minute video. You can just jump in, oh, there's the video about configuration, and they tell me exactly what it is. So yeah. Cool. Yeah, and the plan is I'm going to go back afterwards, edit it down. It'll be a totally separate 1-2 minute long video, which will be nice. Okay, next video, let's talk about... I think we'll talk about the source directory. This is where it gets tricky because there's so much stuff in here. So in this video, I think I'll talk about like our entry point, which is our index. We'll talk about app. This will take some explaining because there's a lot going on here. Honestly, I may just do one video on the entire source directory because it's all related. I don't really know how I'm going to separate that up. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'll decide midway if I actually want to do it as separate videos, but that's what I'm going to do. Okay, here we go. In this video, we'll take a look at the source directory, which was generated for us, and talk about all of the files inside and what they do, what their purpose is for, and how you can modify them or configure them to your heart's content. So if we open up the source directory and we take a look at index.js, we can see this is the entry point into our node.js application. We're bringing in logger, we're bringing in our feathers app, which is defined in a separate file. We're bringing in the port variable. So if you remember back to our configuration, if we look in the default.json, we see that port is set to 3030. So anywhere in your code, if you see app.get, it's actually retrieving that configuration to use. And so in this case, it's going to retrieve it. And if we're in the development environment, that port will be 3030. Awesome. We do app.listen to start the server up. We're listening for any unhandled rejections. And when it's listening, we just log to the console the host and the port of where it's listening. Now, if we take a look at the app file, which is required in here, we can see a lot of what's going on. So once you look at this, if you've ever built an Express application, this is going to look very similar. We're bringing in a lot of middlewares, a lot of packages to basically bootstrap and configure our feathers application. So I'm bringing in the core path module. I'm bringing in serve favicon which is a middleware, which will serve up favicons. I'm bringing in a compressed middleware, helmet, cores. We have our logger, and then we're bringing in the core feathers packages. So we're bringing in feathers directly. We're bringing in the configuration package, which is the one that handles reading in this JSON file and exposing it on our application. We're bringing in Express and Socket.io, but you will notice that these are coming from feathers.js. So these are just lightweight wrappers around those underlying libraries to basically make them work well with feathers.js. You can see we're bringing in some of our own files and modules, which I'll talk about in a second, but it's essentially bringing in those folders. We're bringing in the authentication file, which I'll talk about in a second, and then we create our Express application. So you'll notice we invoke Express, and Express is actually coming from feathers.js Express, and then we pass in a new feathers application. So this is essentially how we let Express know that this is a feathers application, and we'll basically be able to do feathers things and Express things all at the same time. We can see line 24 here, we're bringing in that configuration. We're using app.configure. Later on, I'll talk about what app.configure really is, but we can see we're invoking configuration, and under the hood, that's actually bringing in these JSON files and making all of those configurations available to the rest of the app. Next up, we are setting up all of our middlewares. So we're using Helmet, which sets some secure headers, Cores, which sets our cross-origin resource sharing headers. We have a compression middleware. We have our body parsing middleware, both for JSON bodies and form data bodies. We're serving up a favicon, and then we're just doing a static serve on the / path. Next up, we're setting up our providers, and these essentially enable a particular protocol that our feathers.js application will be available on. So this first one enables express.rest. So this first one enables express.rest, which essentially allows our feathers application to be used as a RESTful API. And the next one enables socket.io, which allows our feathers.js application to be used over sockets in a real-time application. Next up, we can see how we're configuring many different things. So we're saying app.configure, we're passing in our middleware, which we'll talk about. We're passing in authentication, which we'll talk about. We're passing in services, which we'll talk about as well. And we're passing in channels, which we'll talk about as well. We lastly do some error handling. So Feathers adds a not found middleware to the Express package that we're bringing in, and an error handler middleware, which gives us nicer errors and a not found message, which is a bit nicer than the built-in Express one. We are registering all of our app level hooks. In a future video, we'll talk about what hooks are. And lastly, we're exporting our app, which can be used, and which we saw was required in index.js to actually start up the application. So that's it for what's happening in app.js. In the next video, I'll dive into what's actually happening in all of these other folders and the authentication file. You can hear me breathe deep when I'm done. I think that was good. That was a lot of information to take in one video. So I think one video on what is index and app, then we'll jump into all the other stuff, because that app.js is like giant with a lot of stuff going on. Oh, Wasser says, I have no clue what CJ is talking about. Yeah, I would start, I mean, if you're totally new to coding in JavaScript, you kind of need to start at the basics. So, I mean, this file, aside from what's in quotes here, this is bringing in modules inside of node.js. So this is bringing in a package, putting it in a variable, and this is bringing in package or files that we have, or that we didn't write, but Feathers generated them for us. So kind of got to start there, understand like bringing in separate packages and separate modules. And then these function calls, if you've ever used an Express application, like all these middlewares you might be familiar with, but there's a lot of other stuff going on here where it would help to know what modules are, would help to know the basics of like Node.js programming. And there are plenty of YouTube videos out there. Actually, there's one by Traversy Media. Because so there's this Node.js crash course. Because there's a lot of different things going on. Like, we are technically writing Node.js code. However, we're using the Feathers library and a lot of the Express library to do a lot of our coding. And those libraries come with built-in functions and methods that we can use. But at its core, JavaScript is really just a language, and then Node.js is a runtime that lets you write JavaScript that runs like on a desktop computer or on a server. And so in this Node.js crash course, he talks about like what are the core modules, how do you work with the file system, and it's really just like the core of Node.js. And I think he has another video on Express.js. I have some videos on Express too, and that's kind of like a step above that. Like, now you know JavaScript, you know the Node.js ecosystem, how do you build REST APIs? And so you can check out that. If you look on my channel, I do have this CRUD API tutorial. So CRUD stands for create, read, update, delete. And when we're building APIs, that's typically what they do. You can create items, update them, list them all out, delete existing items. It's pretty much what we're going to be doing with our Feathers app, but it handles all of the underlying code. But in this series, I talk about like what is Express and all that good stuff. So you can check that out too. But it's good. Like, I used to teach coding. I used to tell my students, it's good to just be immersed in all of this stuff. Even if you have no idea what's going on, just hearing the words are going to help for later on when you do start learning a lot more. So yeah, but don't be discouraged. Keep learning, all that good stuff. Envy says, the trick about discussing stuff unknown to you is to sound confident. Say it with confidence. That raises the chance of you saying something correct, since that makes you say things that make more sense to you. And I think what he's also getting at is like, I mean, talk about the things that you do know with confidence. You don't necessarily want to like BS everything. Cool. And actually, Wasser, if you're totally new to JavaScript, I do have a recommendation for a totally free course you can take. I think it's called Watch and Code. Yes, it's by a guy named Gordon Zhu. And it's a totally free course, but it takes you through the basics of JavaScript, like what are variables, what are types, and you build a basic to-do application where you first start in just JavaScript. Like it doesn't talk about like the web page or the DOM or anything like that, and it gradually gets bigger and more complex. So if you're totally new to all of this stuff, I say check out that video. You'll learn a ton. And then also check out Coding Train. The Coding Train. He does live streams like I do. I mean, I do live streams like he does. He did it first. But if you check out his playlist, he has tons of like getting started with code, and a lot of the stuff he does is very visual. So as a learner and as a beginner, it could be potentially be a bit easier to grasp because you see things on the page and it's like in real time and interactive versus just looking at a wall of code, which is a bit harder to grasp if you're totally new to all of this. Hello, Y Striker says, I speak Portuguese. I don't speak Portuguese. I only speak English. I know a little bit of Spanish, but that's about it. Infi is saying, I like how the default JSON web token secret looks like it's base64. Look, what if you decode it? Let's try. See if we get anything meaningful out of it. Hey, we got something meaningful out of it. It could be that it I don't know how it randomly generates it. Oh, you know what? It could be they're using like crypto random bytes and then they're creating a base64 version of that. I don't know. We could look at the source code to see, but it is technically just like a random value. Wait, did I close the chat? There it is. Thanks, Katoli. Oh, if you asked everyone in the chat, Infi speaks German, Russian, English, and a little French. Infi is saying, I have no idea what the previous streams were about, but now I know everything about it. Yeah, it's basically this. Nothing changed. I mean, we've had some random tangents and stuff like that, but it's basically this. Yeah, Katoli's got it. Thanks, Katoli. You are a wonderful mod. I appreciate you. Infi is asking, what is the extension that does this? This is called import cost. I think we can search for it. It's really great when you're working with front-end stuff because typically on the front end is where you want to reduce your bundle size. You want to keep things as small as possible to reduce load time. So this package does that. It's nice to see on the back end too, but it's really not as, I feel like, not as relevant on the back end because you're deploying to a server. I don't know. Yeah. Christian says, it's very clear that you've taught, CJ. Nothing creates mastering a subject faster than teaching it. Absolutely. And I used to tell my students all the time too, like, if you want to say that you really know something, you have to teach it. Because to teach something is to show that you actually understand it. And you'll see that, like, if you try to go and teach something and like maybe you just learned it, you'll potentially hit a wall. You'll be like, oh, I thought I understood that, but I don't even know how to explain it. And that's just like your brain playing tricks on you. It's like your brain is trying to be confident. It's like, you know this stuff, but like, do you really? So you have to like fight that cognitive bias and like really, really try to understand things. And teaching others is a great way, or teaching people that know absolutely nothing about what you do is another great way. Like I've tried to talk to my parents about like, what is coding and what do I do? And I think like they kind of get it. They're totally unrelated to the stuff that I do. But again, when you try to teach people that know nothing or to teach someone else what you already know, that's when you'll solidify it or realize that you don't know it that well and you need to dig a bit deeper. Yeah. Oh, and Christian's a former teacher. That's awesome. Hello, Mike. Welcome to the stream. Best stream on YouTube is live. We are live. Yeah. Arnab just asked, how am I getting the cost of my imports? Same thing, it's the import cost extension. Oh, cool. MS Pistek says, watching code is amazing. I did it and it helped. Well, where's my break timer? I need to remember to disable the break timer when I start recording, because I don't want to be interrupted again. Yeah, watching code is amazing. I did it and it helped to clear up a lot of things I struggled with. I'm currently also doing the premium course. I just think he explains things in just mostly plain English and doesn't assume any prior knowledge. So it's really good for just getting up and going. Yeah, Impy says, I learned about this channel from Coding Train. I think a lot of people did. He had me on his stream a while back. If you look at my channel, you can see, there it is. And it has 81,000 views, which is insane. 81,000 people watched an hour and a half. I mean, they probably all didn't stick around for an hour and a half, but a video on how to code, that's crazy. Crazy. But yeah, I was on his channel, and so yeah, that was cool. Hello, Abdur. Abdur wants to see some Laravel and Vue.js. I think eventually, maybe I can get Brooks from Brooks Builds on the channel. Brooks Builds. This is hilarious. This has just recommended the topic dogs to me. Yes, Brooks. He's been on the channel before, but he actually has done, he does streams like on Rust. He actually streams on Twitch. But if you go a little bit further back, he's done some videos on Laravel. So it might actually be cool to get him on my stream and he can teach me some Laravel. Yeah. And I mean, I've only done a little bit of PHP. I definitely don't know Laravel or anything like that. I have to learn it all. Okay. Let's keep moving. The next video, we are going to talk about... should I jump into authentication? I mean, I think the next video, I'm going to go everything else that this file brings in. Because this file brings in a lot, and I talked about all of that, but now, yeah, I think I'll do one video that just does everything. Let's do that, and we'll start at the top. Yeah, we'll start here. We'll talk about all the individual things that it brings in. Let's do that. Hide my face. Turn off pause for 30 minutes. Cool. In this video, we're going to walk through some of the things that our app.js brings in. So the first thing we'll do is if you look at line 6, it's bringing in the logger. And if we look at logger.js, we can see that this is pulling in some packages from Winston. So Winston is a logging application typically used with node.js. This is just creating a basic Winston logger. And so all of our incoming and outgoing requests will be logged to the console for debugging. We'll go back to app.js. All of these are the feathers packages that are being brought in, but if we look at line 14, this is bringing in middleware, and we can see it requires in /middleware. If we look at that, that is a folder, and inside of it is a file, and right now this doesn't really export anything. So it exports a configure function, which we'll talk about, but if you do want to add any of your own express middlewares, you can do that here, and you have access to the app variable, so you could do app.use. And this is a nice way of keeping your code nice and clean, and instead of adding all of your middlewares in this file, which could get very large and unruly, you can do it in that file instead. If we look at the next line, line 15, that's bringing in services. So let's take a look at services. So if we look at index.js, we can see that it is bringing in the user service, which is defined in this folder, and then it's exporting a function. You're going to notice this pattern as we go along. A lot of these things export a function, and we'll talk about that in the next video of like what is the configure function. But you can see we export a function, it gets access to app, and then we're passing in our user service into app.configure. So let's take a look at users. So if we go into the users folder, and we take a look at user service, we can see that this creates the service. So first thing, it requires in the users class. And so this is if we want to define any custom behavior on this service. However, we'll see the next line, we're bringing in the model, and this service actually uses knee.db. So the needb feathers package has done all of the hard work of deciding what to do when you call service.find or service.create or service.delete. It handles out all of that under the hood, but if you do want to override any of the functionality, you can do it in this file. We're bringing in hooks. I'll talk about in another video what hooks actually are. And then we export, again, one of these configure functions. So we create the model. We get our pagination settings, and remember when we see app.get, it's typically reaching into this configuration file and grabbing the configuration. Let's say that again. So when you see app.get, it's reaching into this configuration file and grabbing a particular configuration. So this is grabbing the paginate configuration. So if we look in here, we can see it's just an object. So it's actually passing that object in. So we have some default pagination options for any of the services that get generated. We create our options. We then add our service, so we're saying app.use/users. So the user service is available at /users as a RESTful endpoint, and we're creating an instance of our user service. And remember, our user service actually will extend the needb service, and we'll see that in a second. We get an instance of that service we just registered and then pass in all of the hooks. So if we look back at the top, we're bringing in users.class. So let's take a look at that. Again, this is just an empty class where we can override things if we want to, but we can see that it extends service, which is brought in from Feathers needb. So this is pretty much all we need to do to have a Feathers.js service that interacts with a needb database. We don't have to write any custom querying logic. We can if we want to, but by default, we don't have to. So the class is defined here. It just extends the needb service, and then that service is used here with our options and our application. The next line is bringing in the model. And so if we take a look at, go up 2 directories into the models directory, and then the users.model, we can see that this is bringing in the needb package. And the first line of code, again, we're seeing this app.get. This is getting the configuration for needb. So if we look at default.json, we can see that it's defined /data, so it knows to store all of its data in data. So it's grabbing that configuration. We're creating an instance of needb. And you'll notice all of these lines of code here don't really have anything to do with Feathers. This is just a matter of getting our database set up. And I mentioned it earlier, but needb is just a flat file database. So it's going to be creating a file called users.db that ultimately just has JSON data inside of it. Later on, when you create services with things like SQLize or Connects or Mongoose, your model file will actually have the configuration to define the schema for that table or to connect to the database. But in this case, we just need to set up needb to talk to that file. We're creating an index, and all of our data will be indexed by email, and then we're returning that model. So that model gets returned back in the service as this create model function, and then we create our model. And then the last thing we're bringing in here is, excuse me, I burped. Oh, there's another one. And the last thing we're bringing in here are hooks. And if we take a look at users.hooks, we can see these are all the user service specific hooks. Now, I'll talk about hooks in more detail in a separate video, but you can see here that we're actually bringing in some predefined hooks from Feathers authentication and Feathers local authentication. The idea with hooks are that they are functions that can be called before, after, or on error of any service method call. And again, we'll talk about hooks in more in depth. We'll talk about services more in depth, but essentially services expose all of these methods, and on any Essentially, services expose these methods, and on any given method, we can decide to run a hook. So what this is saying is before the find method is called on the user service, we want to ensure that they are authenticated with their JSON Web Token. Similar with get. So before a user can get any other user, we need to make sure that they are authenticated. And these hooks, which are pre-written, handle the behavior of if you're not logged in, it returns unauthorized, etc. And so there are a lot of different hooks, and before hooks will get called before that particular service method, and after hooks will get called after that particular service method. Error hooks will get called after an error has happened. Again, we'll talk about that more in depth in a separate video. So I believe that's it for the users service. Let's back to the app.get app.js. And the next up is app.hooks. So similar to how we have service level hooks in that those hooks are only going to be called for a given service. If we look at app.hooks, these are hooks that will get called for the entire application on any incoming request. Right now, there are none defined, but we could add our own in here, and those would get called on every single request, regardless of which service that happened on. Back to the app.js, we're also bringing in channels. And so if we take a look at channels, this is where all of our initial socket configuration is happening. So we can see here that when a connection happens, we're joining that client to the anonymous channel. And so because this app has been configured with authentication, that also is happening with our sockets. So any socket that client that connects goes in the anonymous channel. And then once they have logged in and it's a successful login, we actually remove them from the anonymous channel and put them into the authenticated channel. So that way they're only receiving events in which they have access to. And in our application, they'll have access to pretty much any event once they are authenticated. So they'll know when, or could know when new users are created or when new messages are created or updated. There's some other stuff going on in here, which you can read, and it's all commented out. But this last line here is essentially anytime an event occurs, we're going to let anyone on the authenticated channel know that that event happened. So a message was created, a user was created, those types of events, this is actually going to publish that to all of the users on that channel. All right, back to the app.js. And then I think the last one we'll cover is authentication. So we can see on line 19, we're bringing in that authentication file. Let's take a look at it. And this is setting up our authentication, which we asked it to do when we generated the app. So we can see that we're bringing in the authentication service and the JWT strategy from the Feathers.js library. We're also bringing in the local strategy, which allows us to log in with a username and password. And right now we're bringing in this OAuth. Right now we're bringing in Express OAuth, which will allow us to use OAuth. How do I want to say this? I think I'm going to back up. I'm going to go back to here. And I do want to make sure, yeah, that's the last thing we're bringing in. So this is the last stuff. Okay. That's going to be a spike in the audio, so I know to come back to here. And the last thing is authentication. So we can see that we're bringing in authentication right here. We're bringing in a couple of things from the built-in Feathers library. We're bringing in authentication service and the JWT strategy. We're bringing in the local strategy and also Express OAuth. We can see how all of this is used here. We create an authentication service and give it an instance of our app. We register the JSON Web Token strategy. So this is going to be in charge of validating and creating JSON Web Tokens. And then we have our local strategy, which is going to allow us to log in with a username and password or an email and password. And then we're exposing the authentication service on /authentication. So any user that logs in is going to hit /authentication. And then lastly, we're configuring Express OAuth. Now, right now, I don't have any OAuth providers added, but this is just there. So in the future, if I decide to add GitHub or Google or Facebook OAuth, it's going to be ready to go. Now that's it for a tour of what's happening in our generated Express application. I'll see you in the next video. I don't know if that was a good outro. Let me double check what else, or did I miss anything? Models, hooks, authentication. I think I talked about every one of these files. Yeah, we didn't talk about the test directory. Do I want to talk about the test directory? I think I do. Okay, so before I had this file open, and then I closed it and went to app.js. Okay. So this is what's involved in the authentication file. If we go back to the app.js, we can see that's pretty much all of the files that we're bringing in. Lastly, I do also want to show you the test directory, and this is where some default tests have been generated for us. So if we take a look at app.test.js, we can see that it brings in our application. It gets the port from configuration, it gets the host from configuration, and then just does some basic tests. So does the app render a 404 page? Does it render a 404 JSON if we request it as JSON? We can take a look at the authentication test, and this just does some basic tests with logging in a user. And if we go into services, we can see that there are tests defined for all of the services that we have. Excuse me. Right now, we only have the users service, so we can see that there's a basic service. I messed up. So we can see that there is a basic test, which just makes sure that the user service is actually registered and ready to go. Now, all of our custom tests we can add inside of here, and later on in this video series, we will be adding some custom tests, but that's it for now. So I'll see you in the next video where we'll jump into what exactly these configure functions I've been talking about are. Hopefully that clap wasn't too loud. It's going to help me in editing because I can know to go to that point, and that's where the edits will happen. I should have been doing it more, but whew. I think that was decent. Did anybody spot any, like, did I say something wrong or like say one thing but I was doing another thing? Let me know. Here we go. Oh, a lot of chats happening. Oh, oh no! Was there a donation while I was making that video? I may have to edit it out. I didn't hear anything. Did it come up on the screen? Oh. First of all, Mike, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the donation. Who says, "Teach me Obi-Wan," but at the same time, it could have come up during the tutorial. Oh no! I had it disabled. Okay, cool. Whew. But thank you so much, Mike, for the €2 super chat. All right, let's catch up. Let's watch some Coding Train later. Is he going to be streaming later? I'll definitely tune in. Oh yeah, Watson is saying the donation will kill it. I don't think it, let me know. I don't think it popped up because I do have it disabled for whatever reason. I don't know why I had it disabled, but it is disabled. But that's totally fine. It's not your fault, Mike. I very much appreciate your donation. It's just, I wouldn't want it to pop up during a video, that's all. Or a recorded video. Programming with Peter says they do Laravel videos. I mean, I have no issue recommending other channels or check it out. Let's go to Programming with Peter. Oh my goodness. What just happened? Oh no. Okay, I was about to say, did I lose all of my chats? Let's just search for it. Programming with Peter. YouTube. Again, recommending the bodybuilding videos. I don't know why. I don't even run. Like, I barely walk. There he is.
Hello, guys.
Yeah, check him out. Actually, I think I saw you might have made a comment on that free code camp video, I think. I don't know, but yeah, you have Laravel videos. If anyone wants to learn Laravel, check it out. Cool. Yeah, and it's totally fine. Yeah, don't spam the channel with links, but if you want to let other people know that you're doing stuff, I totally support that. We can't have enough tutorials. Everybody learns differently. Everybody teaches differently. Yeah. Yeah, and I think you can't share a link unless you're a mod anyway, but yeah, totally fine. No issue, Peter. Thanks for tuning in, and check out Programming with Peter. Wasser, I wish I could watch every stream till I drown. Is that because it's called stream, and a stream is like water, and you'd be drowning in the water? Yeah. Infia saying, why do things look better on a Mac? They just have some really good defaults. I don't know. Like, I'm not like an Apple fanboy, but I do prefer Mac OS versus Windows, especially the latest Windows, which just like spies on you like crazy. An interesting thing in the latest version of Mac OS, it actually has like individual level permissions, like you have on a mobile phone. Whereas like if an application wants to use the microphone or the camera, you have to actually allow it, which is amazing. Like I've never seen that on desktop before, and Mac OS has it, which is awesome. Ooh, interesting. I think they're talking about learning English. Oh, Kacholi says I have to redo it, at least the donation part. Did the sound come through or did it pop up? I feel like it wasn't on. See you later, Peter. Thanks for tuning in. Matcha says your voice sounds strained. I have been talking. Let's see how long I've been live. 3 hours. Oh, time goes by so fast, and I'm only 3 videos into the second one. And there's another one. I don't think it showed up that time. Did it? Thanks so much, Mike, for the €2 super chat. Did it show up? Matcha says it's because you're flexing on us the entire time. See you later, Miss Bistek. See you next time. Oh, so it did happen 17 minutes ago. I believe you. Ugh. Which part of the video was I on, though? Let's, okay, they're saying it did show up. Okay. I'm actually gonna go, I'm gonna see which part of the video it was in, so I know I can re-record that part. And again, thank you, Mike. Like, I'm not saying like, it's my fault, not your fault. I feel like I have Twitch alerts turned off, though. Or, like, stream alerts. Interesting. The video it was in, so I know I can All right, we're going back 16, 17-ish. There it is. All right, let's function, which we'll talk about. File dodges that are being brought in, but if we look at line 14, this is bringing in middleware, and we can see it requires in /middleware. If we look at that, oh, that's almost perfect. We can see that it requires in /middleware. Okay. That is a folder, and inside of it is a file, and right now this doesn't really export anything. So it exports a configure function, which we'll talk about, but if you do want to add any of your own express middlewares, you can do that here, and you have access to the app variable, so you can do app.use. And this is a nice way of keeping your code nice and clean, and instead of adding all of your middlewares in this file, which could get very large and unruly, you can do it in that file instead. If we look at the next line, line 15, that's cool. I just have to re-record the middleware part. That is not bad at all. Yeah, not bad at all. Because I can slice and dice and splice it in. Yeah. Can't I blur it out? It appears in the top left. I don't think it's on the recorded video. I don't have it as like separate tracks of like an overlay. So it's on there. No, again, no worries, Mike. I appreciate you. Yeah, and because the idea is these videos might eventually make it into the Feathers documentation, and I don't want my face to be there. I don't want there to be like donations and stuff like that. It should be clean. Everyone spams CJ with money. Genius plan. Infi is saying, I think a text like, I'm recording this in a stream, excuse the donation when it pops up, would be okay enough for the future viewers. I'm honestly okay with just redoing it because it's so small. It's just the part where I talk about middleware. So I'm going to do that. Let me just do that really quick. Boo-doo, boo-doo. So first up on line 14, we can see that we're bringing in middleware. So let's take a look at that. And we can see this file just exports a function. Now this is known as a configure function, which we'll talk about in a future video. But if you do want to add any custom middlewares to your Express application, you can do that here because you do have access to the app variable. Now, if we go back to app.js, we can see that we're bringing in services. I don't want to say that. Now let's go back to app.js. And there I will splice in when I talk about services. I can see this. I just looked over and I saw that I saw that the donation happened. You know what? I probably just need to. It's supposed to be hidden, is the thing. It's literally hidden. I don't know why it popped up. Yeah, I think I'll just remove it from this one. Yeah, wait, I don't have it on any other one? Regardless, thanks again. Thanks again, Mike, who said before you start recording again. No, I'm done. I really appreciate it. Did that pop up? Do I need to do that one again? Let's see. Matcha says the mental is fading. It is. Said before you start recording again. I might end the stream in a little bit. It's all over now. Place it in. Yeah. Left. I don't think it's now this is known as a configure function, which we'll talk about in a future video. But if you do want to add any custom middlewares to your Express application, you can do that here because you do have access to the app variable. Now, if we go back to app.js, we can see that we're bringing in services. Cut. I don't want to say that. Now let's go back to app.js. Okay, I just have to record that part. If we go back to app.js. Here we go. I don't have to do the whole thing again. This is going to be some serious pro slice and dice editing. Basically, I just need to have this file open and say, if we go back, hide my camera. Now, we can go back to app.js. I think that's good enough. It might seem awkward in the edit, but it'll be fine. Should be fine. Matcha says we should finish with looking at some programming memes, and I can rate them. Oh, Wasserfrisch. Is that are you German? Is that German? Water fresh, fresh water, quick maths. Maybe that's not German. Is that like fake German? Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Ja. Wait, what? Oh, I typed google.translate.com instead of translate.google.com. Translate.com was trying to trick me. Fresh water. Let's go to German. Frisches Wasser. Hey, that's pretty close. Yeah. Yeah, let's take a look at our slash programming here. I agree. You know what? You're right, Con. Maybe, like, Mike has actually donated a ton to this channel, so What if we just leave it in because he has donated a lot? I'll think on that. You make a good point. You make a really good point. Yeah. Okay, let's go to Reddit. Yeah, turn it around so it becomes water fresh. Ich spreche Deutsch. I lived in Germany when I was in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And 5th grade was a German immersion class where our teacher would only teach us in German for half of the day. And then we could speak English after that. But, which is cool. I actually learned quite a bit of German. I've forgotten most of it. But the thing about learning world history in German when you don't really speak German is that you forget most of it. So I also learned about anatomy in German, the Brustbone, and other things like that. But now I don't know what they're called in English. I mean, this is the breastbone, but like, I don't know. I have a German phrase that I always used to say. I don't know how correct it is anymore. Entschuldigung bitte, meine Deutsch ist nicht so gut. Hast du ein Zahnstochel? Means, excuse me, please, my German is not so good. Do you have a toothpick? That was probably not the right pronunciation, but we'll go on. Okay, welcome to CJ Critiques Programmer Human. Not you. Welcome to CJ Critiques Programmer Human. I will tell you if these jokes are funny or not. Let's start. Refactoring is the only way towards world peace. When the senior developer refactors your code. Somebody touch my spaghetti! It's funny. Because I can relate, and I know people who can relate. Because it's like you write it, and honestly, like there's different ways to go about it. Like as a senior developer, instead of rewriting their code, this could turn into like a pairing or a mentoring session where instead of just overwriting everything, it's a teaching opportunity so that programmer can get better. But that's not how everyone does it. A lot of people will let the junior write something or the mid and then just decide to rewrite it themselves without even talking to them, which is not ideal. But this is funny because it happens. Wasserfrisch is saying you are better than I expect. Cool. Do I remember the history or anatomy? I remember Tenochtitlan, which I think is Mexico City, or like in terms of world history. I learned because we learned about world history, like the Native Americans. Yeah. Some tear emojis and laughs. Yeah, Christian says it sounded pretty correct to me. I don't know, like Exchuligon? I mean, I don't know if that's... I should probably look at the wording so I can actually read it in terms of, excuse me. Okay, next up, we have this one. Not tree for Python, though. Local variables when they see a curly brace. I'm a head out. is funny. Because it's talking about, like, scope and... the variables, I'm gonna laugh at every single one of these, I bet. But the variables literally no longer exist once you're outside of the local scope. It's probably, I mean, particularly in JavaScript, this happens. So after that curly brace is there, like those variables don't exist anymore. So it's like your friend's like, I'm a head out. Okay, let's keep moving. Next one. Yes, enslaved OS. Virtual machine. Enslaved. I'm too easy. I laugh at too many things, but this is funny because the virtual machine lives inside of your computer and like it can't get out. It's pretty much enslaved. I don't know. That one gets points too. I mean, we are looking at the top jokes on programmer humor. So if other people find it funny, I'm probably going to find it funny too. All right, next one. Thank you. When your merge requests get approved. That's a good one. JavaScript is, I'm a head out. Is this a new meme? Like, I mean, I get it in the general sense of like, I'm a head out, but, let's see. Updated 3 days ago, added 9 days ago on Know Your Meme. So this is a new meme. New meme alert! I'm a head out is a reaction image macro series using a screenshot of the American cartoon character SpongeBob SquarePants. Okay. Origin is in 2001. In 2018, it's mentioned on Twitter. August 2nd on Twitter is when the SpongeBob I'm a head out originated. Cool. Know your memes. This is a new one. I didn't know it was actually a meme. It's funny, even though I don't know that it's a meme. It's funny. But here we go. It's being repeated. This is the nature of memes on the internet. This is from Christina Zhu. I guess it's a tweet. Stop making fun of different programming languages. C is fast. Java is popular. Ruby is cool. Python is beautiful. JavaScript. Haskell is intriguing. I mean, JavaScript is JavaScript. I think the fact that there is no adjective after it means you can insert your own adjective. It's everyone's language. Noxien. No, I can count in German. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 13, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Some of those were wrong. Und ich mag nackt durch. Yeah, know your memes with CJ. All right. I think Wasser is heading out. If you are, good night. If not, stick around. All right, let's do a couple more, and then I'm a head out. When you disagree with someone's statement but don't want to start an argument. So not true. No, I shouldn't have laughed at that one. It's okay. It's like low effort, I feel like. 99 Luftballons. So when I was in a punk rock band in high school, we actually covered 99 Red Balloons, which was covered by Goldfinger, and they actually do one verse in German, and I would sing that verse in German. So there's a thing. Yeah, I went great until 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We used to laugh so much because sex is 6 in German. 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. Yeah. All right, here's another one. This world needs that kind of people. I'm going to start a support group for people who still need their code to support IE11. You're not alone. This is not funny, but it's actually very true. So I'm on Denver Dev Slack, which is a Slack channel where like all the developers in Denver talk and stuff like that. And there's been a ton of chat lately about people still having to support IE10, IE11. Yeah. I need more umlaut on the foomph. 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 Okay, one more. Let's do one more meme. Or one more programmer humor thing. It's not a meme. It could be a meme, but it may not. Not all programmer humor posts are memes, but some programmer humor posts are memes. Okay, Star Wars has something to say about Chrome. It's over Chromium. It's over Chromium. I have 64 gigabytes of RAM. You underestimate my RAM usage. It's funny. It's not laugh out loud funny, but it's funny because Chrome does take up a lot of memory. And who are these two people? It makes sense. This is something that would happen in Star Wars. Okay, let's keep going. I want to laugh. The last one, I need to go out on a laugh. That's an ambush. Run! Programmer interview. Can you work under pressure? Yes, of course. 3 months later. It's all right. It's fun. It's funny. Does that count as a laugh? I don't think it counts as a laugh. Okay, weird flex, but okay. Hell yeah, I know what Hell yeah, I know about linked lists. And they show some HTML. What else you got? Please reverse that linked list using CSS. Display flex, flex direction, column reverse. Boom. Weird flex, but okay, this is funny. It's funny because when someone talks about a linked list, they're not typically talking about an HTML list. This is like a data structures, computer science concept. but this person, I'm guessing, is making a joke that they know about linked lists. And it's like a typical interview question. Can you reverse a linked list? And this one person says, reverse that linked list using CSS. And you actually can do that with Flexbox, which allows you to like just instantly reverse some elements. This was funny. We're going to go out on that note. Let's catch up on any extra chats, and then we'll go. Matcha is saying Ladybug is a great new podcast. Is it about coding, or is it just in general? Oh, women in tech. That's awesome. They're taking a short break from new episodes, but they do have episodes. Let's see. Can we see an episode list? Oh, these are the episodes. Okay. Career paths in tech, entrepreneurship, CSS. That's awesome. Yeah, check it out. Die Zeit ist vorüber. I don't know what that even means. Let's look it up. I could have said something bad. Hopefully not. To English. The time is over. It is, yeah. Ending on a high note. There we go. Great stream. See ya. CJ, you're a machine dude. Thanks for all you do. Thanks, Rel. Okay, we didn't get very far today, but we did. I mean, we recorded probably five, maybe 6 videos, which I think is totally great because we also answered a lot of questions. We hung out. We had a good time. Whew. Okay. And yes, Zeit is time in German, I believe. All right. That's it. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I most likely will stream again tomorrow. I don't want to make any commitments, but it'll most likely be around the same time. I may sleep in. It'll maybe be a little bit later. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Wherever you are in the world. Wait. Thanks to Mike. Before we go, thank you, Mike. I think I can see super chats. Viewer activity. Yes. Mike with 3 €2 super chats. Thank you so much, Mike. It is very much appreciated. And to everyone else, wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. And until next time, here's this.